The chairpersons for this session are Dr. P. Prasanna Devi, Assistant Professor, Department of English, SFR College, Sivakasi. Welcome, ma'am. We're really glad that you can join us. Our second chairperson is Dr. GRACELYN David, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Women's Christian College, Nagercoil. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you again. Over to you, ma'am. We have the presenters ready, ma'am. Thank you so much.
A very good afternoon to you all, and happy to meet you again. All right, and now we'll better enter into the paper presentation session. And today we have 16 paper presenters presenting your papers today. And let's move on to the first participant, Dr. C. Ramakrishnan, Assistant Professor, Rajapalayam Rajas College, Virudhunagar, Tamil Nadu. Dr. Ramakrishnan. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are, ma'am.
Yes, Dr. Ramakrishnan, it's your time now.
Yeah, right. Ma'am, am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, you're audible, Dr. Ramakrishnan.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. For organizing such kind of online conference during the pandemic period. Really, it is an very useful program for the teachers, not only teachers, for students also. Because not only in the pandemic period, the road condition is like that, very difficult to travel plus one place to another place. So this kind of conference really very helpful for us to share our opinion, what we feel. Every day just in the online classes we are meeting the students, and this kind of atmosphere really very helpful for us. So once again, I thank all the organizing team and the chairpersons who are listening to the presentation. So my presentation on the topic language through literature and outcome-based education. Outcome-based education, everyone work on, teach, everyone do for some outcome. It started from the school itself. But in higher education, the same thing should be continued. It's my experience, as my college is a rural college. With the student, I want my experience in what way the outcome of the students in higher secondary education and what should be the higher education. That is the comparison. And I handled the first year students. Really, it was a shocking one that even English medium students have too much hesitation to share their ideas in English. When I asked them your English classes and how do you listen to the English classes, they say that's the English classes, everything's going on English, and we answer all the questions. Moreover, we scored 90% in part 2 English. But the main problem is they are not able to communicate properly. They feel too much difficulties. Half an hour if we take classes for them in English, and they feel a different atmosphere. Sir, there they are using bilingual, and sometimes they explained all the matters in Tamil, in our mother tongue. Then only they explain in English. So we have understood all the things what is going on in the classroom, but here totally if you are taking in English, sorry sir, we won't understand, like that only they are saying. But another one is whatever the question we ask from the grammar portions, they easily answer them. Either it may be a tense, either it may be a degrees of comparison, and whatever the subject it may be, they can answer. So they view English as a subject. They don't know they are studying English, they are learning English for communication purpose. That is the main problem. The method, already the previous session, Sir explained regarding the grammar translation method, direct method, bilingual method, the three methods normally using in English language classroom. But that methods helpful for the students to understand all the contents in English subject, but the purpose is totally lacking. They teach, I think, maximum students are motivated to get marks. There is no teachers take language and literature. We teachers know it well in more oriented, in percentage oriented only they concentrate. That the purpose is totally lacking. Does how it changed in centered. So I thought that it may be the very apt area, because the title of the conference is like that, covered all the things. Language to understand literature, literature helps to know culture. There is some coherence in that. So language, if you want to learn language, through literature only we can develop them. Then what are the ways we can develop language with the support of the literature? That is a big question, because when we take literature, poetry, drama or prose, whatever we teach them, immediately they ask for materials. Sir, how can we write essays as our own? Just you provide material. In grammar also, even they wanted to translate and give what we call the mind map, like that only they prefer. Whenever we enter the classroom, the students are sitting like as they are in the war front. If the class is in English, because I am talking about my experience, I am sharing my experience. In my English class, how the students responded at the first semester, and how I used literature to develop the language of the students. Like that only it moves. At the same time, with the second year, somewhat they feel better, because they understand the language is nothing but for communication. Literature, why we study literature, why we study prose and poetry, not to write essay or not to answer in the examination. And for communication itself, poetry and prose can be studied. Like that only they realized. Step by step only they started to know why we are sitting in the language classroom. Poetry, what do you mean by poetry? Means they don't know what is poetry, but poetry client, the memorable poem they have, they memorized all the poem, and any time if they ask them, they are ready to say only the poem. What is the content of the poem? They don't know. Okay, just an example is the imagination, that poetry is nothing but creativity. And, yeah. Poetry is nothing but creativity, and the prose support all them to develop vocabulary, drama for conversation. Like that, only many different parts in literature, but the students fail to realize why they study. Even now, just we need essay, like that only they were moving. And another more thing, students have too much hesitation to interact with the teacher in the English language. Because nowadays maximum colleges go education, a kind of ego, a kind of a complex, like that only they feel. If one student talk English well, and then next 2 days after, that students won't talk in English, because some things happen inside the classroom. How dare you talk in English with that teacher? Just I won't make friendship with you. That kind of is also raised, because these are the things happening in the beginning. So then in the classes, just we won't focus literature not only to understand that literature, and communication, student-centered class. Just a different way make the students to think. And the best example I had experience in 2 areas. One is paradox, another one is poetry. Just a few examples only I had chosen. And the paradox, when you take that paradox, I give some example regarding that paradox. Just a simple sentence only I gave. I love, hate, hate, love. That's all. I love, hate, hate, love. That's all. Then somewhat it looked different. I love, hate, hate, love. In what are the ways that statement can be explained? Why he loves hate and hates love? Then in what are the possible ways we can think? Yeah, I love, hate, love after reading the play Othello. It is because of Othello to ended. Othello lost her wife Desdemona. It is because of too much love. Like that. Take any historical play, like Antony and Cleopatra and Romeo and Juliet. Everything is because of love. So that only after reading that, and I hate love. I like that only they are saying, because of love only everything it happens. Just an example. In that way only we can make the students to what is the opinion of other students. First make them to talk in their mother tongue, then little they feel some kind of freeness. So when they think themselves, they have a chance to know how to talk in the classroom. That 1 hour when I made them to be in that atmosphere, automatically they feel somewhat convenient. Second semester, when asked if star comes, definitely he will give that commitments, and we have some deep answer like that only. They started to think, they discussed, and for the second year I felt the difference. Maximum, not all the students, 60% of the students feel in the language classroom, because continuously the subject is going on. They have a different expression like this. Students' choice, just we have to give, we make them. The same thing. Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Sir, please don't take more than 10 minutes to present. Please don't take more than 10 minutes, right? And
Oh,
please
sorry.
try to wind up, sir. Yeah, you're
okay, ma'am. Just let me conclude. Okay, just like the same thing I told you, the restaurant, it is always crowded. Then I make the students to think why nobody goes to the restaurant. Means what? Either they want to destroy the hotel or they want to get food in the hotel. Like there are different opinions that may come. The same thing in poetry also. Two roads diverge in wood. Very famous poem, everyone knows well. Road means what? A different way, just you think. Road means nothing but the road is life. Road is nothing but road is course, what we choose. Road is nothing but choice. Like that, only different vocabulary they can develop, and they have a chance to give more ideas. In that way only, what we choose poetry, what we choose prose, and in the author point of view, just sometimes we explained at the same time in the students' point of view, they give different explanation for that. So the students felt themselves that we also know something, we also talk in English. Automatically the literature, because literature, that is a gift for all the students. So through that only the language can be developed. That is my experience, and thank you very much for providing such kind of opportunity. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Dr. C. Ramakrishnan, and the presentation was really good. All right. Thank you so much for giving us a lot of information. And now, Prasanna Devi ma'am, shall we move on to the next candidate, or do you have any other questions? Do you have any questions?
No, ma'am. We can move on to the next presenter.
Fine. Audience, do you have any questions? Yes, if you do not have any questions, we'll just move on to the next candidate. And here we have a few instructions for the candidates. Please adhere to the time limit. All right, you have been given only 8 minutes to present and 2 minutes for questioning. All right, and audience, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat box. All right, please don't interrupt the speaker. Please put it in the chat box, and the question will be answered. All right, and now we'll move on to the second participant. The second participant is Dr. B. Shivapriya, Assistant Professor, SFA College for Women, Sivakasi, Tamil Nadu. Dr. Shivapriya.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, ma'am. Welcome back.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. I'll share my screen now.
Yes.
Ma'am, can you see my screen?
Okay, Chairpriya.
Is it visible, ma'am? Prasanna Devi, ma'am, is it visible?
Not visible, ma'am. Yes, now it is visible.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Respected organizers and respected chairpersons of this session, a very good afternoon to you all. The title of my presentation is From Tradition to Modernity, a study of Baptist and American Brat. Baptist, we all know, the American novelist of Gujarati Parsi descent. She is best known for her collaborative work with Indo-Canadian filmmaker Deepa Mehta. Her novels focus on her personal experience of immigration to the US and membership in the Parsi Zoroastrian community. The Crow Eaters, Pakistani Bride, Cracking India, and American Brat Water are the renowned literary pieces of Baptist Sidhwa. Baptist Sidhwa is a product of the conflicts and reconciliations of the East and West. Speaking of the East and West encounter, Meenakshi Mukherjee, the Sahitya Academy Award winner, observes, in some novels of Baptist Sidhwa, the West appears as a character, in some others as an attitude or as a set of values. In an American Brat, the conflict between the two cultures is perceptible not only on the social plane, but also on the personal level, leading to the quest for identity. Some of the highlights of my papers. Baptist Sidhwa, an American Brat, is set partly in Lahore and partly in United States. It depicts the adventures of a young Pakistani Parsi girl, Feroza Jinwala, in America. This paper attempts to highlight the changes that has taken place in the life of Feroza Jinwala, a Lahore girl who totally turns to the American way of thinking and living. So Feroza, she is a Lahore-based family. She was sent to USA for a 3-month vacation to broaden her outlook in life. Feroza tried to cope with the different lifestyle of the Americans and the modern technology used by them. For example, when she just enters the airport, she's just
Dr. Shivapriya?
Am I audible?
Yeah. You may begin. Yeah, you may continue. You may proceed. Proceed, please. Something went wrong in between.
Okay,
now it's all right. Now it's all right. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Just highlighting the paper.
Okay.
Ma'am, can you see my screen? Can you see my PowerPoint?
No.
Okay, wait. Just a moment, ma'am. Just a moment. Ma'am, can you see my screen now?
Yes. Visible.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Just highlighting, I'm just talking about Baptist Sidhwa, an American Brat, which is partly set in Lahore and partly in the United States. It depicts the adventures of a young Pakistani Parsi girl, Feroza Jinwala, in America. This paper attempts to highlight the changes that has taken place in the life of Feroza Jinwala, a Lahore girl who totally turns into the American way of thinking and living. Feroza, she's Lahore-based. She's from a Lahore-based family. She was sent to USA for a 3-month vacation to broaden her outlook in life. Feroza tries to cope with the different lifestyles of the Americans and the modern technology used by them. Some of the queries She was awestruck when she entered the American side, are you a student? How long do you wish to stay here in the United States? She was just puzzled by all these questions. Actually, these are the normal questions asked to everyone when they enter into a new country. Her uncle, Manik, just guarantees the officers that the girl will go back at the end of 3 months or whenever her visa expires. But whether she returns to her native place is a big question mark. Towards the end of the novel, we get the solution for the question mark. Her innocence is lost totally when she gets into the American way of living. She was bewitched by the dazzling wares in the shops at New York. Menak, her uncle, wants Feroza to imbibe the progressive and stimulating culture of the USA. Sidva is at her best as she humorously delineates Feroza adapting to an alien culture and the stress that occurs when colliding cultures clash. The change in lifestyle. In USA, Feroza's uncle wants Feroza to become self-sufficient and independent. She begins to assimilate the independence of mind and spirit and study self-confidence offered by the new world, which is alien to her third world experience and sheltered upbringing. Gradually, she outgrows her uncle's wishes, uncle's expectations. She absorbs the culture shock that alters her lifestyle. She learns to drive, drink, dance, and use a more direct and less polite form of language. The novel ends ambivalently that the mature Feroza, despite an estranged love affair and general feeling of depression, prefers the struggle for freedom and self-fulfillment at the USA instead of the settled life, family, and easy contentment at Lahore. Finally, Feroza becomes, in her mother's words, an American brat, which is the aptness to the title. To sum up, Bapsi Sidva evinces a keen interest in the interaction of the set of values that exist side by side and often collapse. Zoroastrian mode of life of Feroza, the central consciousness, the modern American lifestyle, life in which she emphasizes of material prosperity. The resultant friction compels her to make a moral choice. This fate is shared by many an expatriate even today. In Feroza, there's a conscious shift from conservative time to cosmopolitan attitude and from religious exclusiveness towards universalism. This progression in the consciousness of Feroza becomes the turns her from the center to narrative. To sum up, again, I put forth my points as an American brat moves its locale for the most part to the new world, the United States of America. It reflects the recent trend of globalization, the concept of the world as a global village, and the increasing movement of professionals from the third world to the first world nations like the USA, England, Australia, and Canada. As people move from one part of the world to another, national boundaries dissolve. The formation and maintenance of community takes new dimensions. To quote the word of Lazo, life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them, that only creates sorrow. I repeat, life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them, that only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. I agree this terms of Lazo in the life as depicted by Bapsi Sidva in the life of Feroza Jinwala. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for the opportunity. Thus, Feroza Jinwala, from a modern Parsi girl, a Zoroastrian, she turns completely into an American modern girl. And this is the finding I have shown through my paper, From Tradition to Modernity, a study of Bapsi Sidva as an American brand. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Shiva. It was nice listening to you, and the paper was really good. Wonderful, right?
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Audience, do you have any questions?
Sivapriya, ma'am,
Yes.
may I ask Sivapriya, ma'am, one question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Sivapriya, actually, what is the meaning of the word brat?
A brat, a spoiled child, something done. That's what a brat is.
Naughty.
Yes, yes,
So,
yes.
has baptist the title in a negative way? What do you think?
I don't find that it is a form of negative way. Normally, a girl from traditional background moving into a modern society, she changes herself. I cannot say it is a negative way. It's just this is a change, a transformation seen in all the people who move from a particular part of country to the other country. So, brat here does not have a negative connotation. I feel so.
Okay, okay, Sivapriya. Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
Well
Thank you,
answered,
ma'am.
Dr.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
well answered, ma'am. Well answered, Dr. Sivakasi.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Shall
Thank
we
you.
move to the next? Yeah. Thank you. Shall we move to the next participant now, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Shall we
May
move to the
I
next? Yeah.
May I invite Dr. Padma Priya, Assistant Professor, SFR College for Women, Sivakasi, to present her paper.
Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. You may proceed.
Yes, ma'am. Hope the screen is visible to
Yeah, it's visible, ma'am. It's visible, ma'am. You may proceed.
So as you find here, the impact of gender reversed in Manjula Padmanabhan's Harvest. So it is a play, and I thought of giving a view about it, in particular about the gender reversed. So this is one of the latest version of this play. So for the first time, the author has made an experimental write-up for the play, which was written in 1997, and she has taken the play back and she has expanded the version and released in 2017. Probably it is a sort of a comparison I would like to give. That is where I have made it with the impact of gender reversed. So let us see what is that. I know that I'm deliberately making this cover of the book visible to you. If you have an idea of purchasing the book, please go for this version. Probably with the end of the reading, apart from the insight, what we get with all sorts of from all sorts of book, I think this book will make us to have a lot of parallel reading, which we ought to. Getting back to the etymology of the word harvest, we all aware about that. The word is from the Middle East English, and it has the meaning of, as it is mentioned here, it is a sort of a time, harvest time, during the season of autumn and with the month of August. And we know the meaning of the word harvest. So a ripened crops, which is ready to reap. So that's the meaning. But we, as in a metaphorical context, we relate that to so many parts of our life, which is related to the consequence, which means the result. And most probably the end result, what we look forward, will be a positive one. But here in the play, do the same sort of idea Manjula Padmanabhan is making us to realize with giving a title as Harvest. It is not. So what is that? So we are going to see that. So before getting into the play, I would like you to have a look on the works of Manjula Padmanabhan. So she started publishing his work and his writing venture from 1984. I could tell that she is one pioneering in bringing the science fiction or the concoction of literature and technology to the Indian writing in English screen. So she will be the pioneer, and we have all of the works here for your view. But I would like to focus on The Harvest, as I told, which is written in 1997, and the reversed version, gender reversed version in 2017.
So what are all the impact I have got by reading this play? So I have mentioned it here. So the first thing, an apt quote for me, it came to my mind while I read, is that we have only two choices: do something or do nothing. So it is from the writing. It is from the writing of Tony Kirwan. So why I relate this quote here with the play is the spine of the both the plays, both the representation will be two characters, Jaya and Jaydev. I think these two characters have with the later do nothing. What is that nothing? So before getting into that, I would like to give an overview about whenever we sit to read literature or any part of any genres of literature, we will be having a discipline, other disciplinary learning as a parallel. Like here I have mentioned some terms, which is Marxism, science fiction, anthropology, and psychology. Probably this is an umbrella term which will be suitable for many sorts of literary pieces. I have mentioned just 4 terms which this play focuses on. And the next impact is, as a writer, probably we from the literary family, I think we will be having a good writing skill. I hope so. So if we wanted to be a writer, I think we can get into the experimental part of writing, and we have to be very strong. So that is the end of the reading of Manjula Padmanabhan's play. I have realized from that. And then she has broken the stereotypical norms of if a play or if a piece of a literature, if that is going to be women-centric, always it end up with an emotional denouement, or we'll often find a lump in our throat that the character is heavy and why they are suffering a lot. But then here he broke down the stereotypical norms of why the character suffers. On the other note, she gives us the path that you can be independent by making your own decision in a positive note. And the next thing is that we find a lot of connotation or of poor in this play. So when it comes with poor, and we call them, we restrict them with the names of subaltern or any other downtrodden names. But here, let me confine them that as poor, because I don't want any other view to be left on these sorts of people. So what will be the capital, what will be the strength for them is their own body. So only with that, they are being a survivor in this part of the society. So that capital is also been harvested. So that's what I have made that in capital form. So these are the impact I have got while reading this play. So I think you will be, most of you here will be aware about this Frederick Jameson. And he is an American literary critic, a philosopher, and he has got back with the Marxist political theories in his writing. So politics of utopian view. This is one of his essays. So in that he has talked about these 2 points, these observation of what does it mean by utopia, and that is very much related to this play also. So I thought of revealing 2 terms here in order to relate that with harvest: root of all evil and the political and the social arrangements. So these are the 2 terms seem to be the crux of the entire harvest. So what are the rules or roots of all evils here? So here the character, what you call as a protagonist or the spine of any of this piece, they undergoes the pressure of unemployment, starvation, and poorness, and that lead them to be get into the path of evil. And then the political and the social arrangement. So I think this is one of a view that it may ripple effect on the moral and bioethical debates which we could find in the play. So I'm not going to explain all the characters here, but I'm just making this table up here in order to get you observe what is the difference it makes. The first column will be characters in Harvest is from 1997. Yes, ma'am.
Please, occur to the time. All right, please write down that. Please, yeah.
So I thought of just depicting this in order to observe. let me come to the theme. I think this is exactly the paradigm shift what our conference is focusing on. So what I have numbered are the themes which has been discussed here. So with first version, we could find Jaya, and she has suffered a lot, and she exhibits how a woman has to be independent, and she will never get back to a slave in the hands of machine or the virtual world. She just wanted to move away from what the society has made her to restrict herself in one room, but she will be she thought of getting away from all the restrictions, and she wants to lead her life in a very natural way. So likewise, in the next version, we find Jaidev. But what makes the difference is we find the first version is seem to be more impactful than, or more strong than, the next version. The author herself has mentioned that she has come out with the next version in order to break down the stereotypical norms which is placed on the hands of women and their suffering. And while you read the next version of the play, you will never find that the heavy heart while you complete the play, because it is talked on the perspective of a man. So here we have to understand that Manjula Padmanabhan has again talked about what sort of, as a reader or in a society, how we look at suffering of a woman and suffering of a man. We take it for granted with suffering of women, and if it is a man, we find that he is getting into the process of evolution of his life. So this is the impact I have got from this play. If you are interested to read the play, you can just buy the book and start reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhatmapriya. Thank you so much. The presentation was really good. And I love that, victims are vulnerable. Yeah, they are vulnerable, right? I do agree. And, I mean, even right in the past till today, no way to victims. They are vulnerable, right? And I did love it, right? Any queries from the audience side? Or Dr. Prasanna Devi? Prasanna Devi, shall we move on to the next candidate?
Yes, sure, ma'am.
Yeah, fine. So next we have Mrs. Geetanjali Adia, PhD scholar, RIMT University, Punjab. Ms. Geetanjali, are you there? I think she's there. Yes, Geetanjali? Ms. Geetanjali Adia? She's in the mute mode.
Move on to the next participant.
Ms. Geetanjali?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello.
You're audible now? Yeah, you're audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. It's your time now.
Yeah. Oh, okay, ma'am. Actually, I'm unable to start the video. So I just go like that?
Yeah, proceed. Okay. Proceed.
The title of my paper is The Strange Case of Billy Biswas. This is by Arun Joshi, an insight into the mind of the first person witness narrator. And now I'm starting my paper. The first person witness narrator creates the story illusion by establishing his relationship within the tale he narrates. And if we say the witness narrator is not watching the essentials of the life, that is the main narrator, the Billy Biswas life from the periphery, not from the periphery, but at the center of the story, because there is a two things. The one thing is the narrator, that is a Romi Sahai, and the other is the Billy Biswas, that is the protagonist of the novel. And the responsibility of establishing his relation rest of the narrator, it can be establishing by an angle. Now I'm quoting the Norman Friedman's state by switching over from omniscient to first person point of view. The author channels information and the possibility from the different point of view come in the single point of view. And now I'm coming to the story, the Romi Sahai. In this story, actually the Romi Sahai And then Romy Sahai and Billy Biswas is in New York, and they share apartment in New York, because Romy Sahai and Billy Biswas, the Billy Biswas father sent him to become in civil engineering as a student, but Billy Biswas has a clashes with a he has interested to take a course of anthropology, and he switches over from civil engineering to anthropology. In this particular point, the Billy Biswas has switched over to the course, and the Romy Sahai has started taking primitive forces in him. And Romy Sahai, that noticing primitive forces, he has taken us in so many examples. Like in New York, there he has involved with a girl that is named Tula, and he has distinguishing that he is a different kind of person. Billy feels that something inside, but he is not yet too sure. And in this point, like in the story as the move, all the main thing is that the first person narrator is witnessing all the things, and if he's directly involved to the scenes. And as we further move, the Romy Sahai is, you can say, is come back to India as his father died, and he has joined as a normal middle class life in Arun Joshi's word. And he has joined as an assistant professor in Delhi University, and vice versa. He married a middle class girl, but he is not satisfied. At this point, you can say the clashes between the civilized and modernity. It is not battle, but it is a clash. And like how the protagonist has gone, move towards civilized into the modernity, because from the back he has studied in New York anthropology, but now he's not satisfied as all the middle class in his life. This is the main point of this thing, how he in each and every point he has not satisfied, because the kind of forces in him, you can say, comes up with something in him, like to go towards the civilized and the tradition culture. As we say, he goes for expedition in Madhya Pradesh, and the Billy Biswas mysteriously vanishes, and he searched vigorously. The police vigorously searched for him, but in vain. Somebody presumed that he has been killed by a tiger. On the another point, even at that Madhya Pradesh expedition, he involved with another girl, that is another tribal woman, because there is the clash is seen in that point also. But on the other hand, we are talking about the narrator, that is the main narrator. If we say this is the spokesman of you can say Arun Joshi. This is a kind of an autobiography of an Arun Joshi's. He has you can say put himself as a narrator in the novel in the name of the character, that Romy Sahai. And Romy Sahai become an IS officer, and he becomes an professor. At that point, he started searching. His father contacted Romy Sahai, and he started searching for you can say Billy. But at that point, he keep on searching him, but nothing can be, you can say, in this point. But the use of technique by Joshi gives a dramatic effect of the novel, as we taken directly to this scene that narrator is telling as well as showing the reader as what goes in the story. And Romy, as a narrator in the novel, immediately establishing authentic proclamation that in a very beginning he is completely understood Billy, because at that point he started seeing a primitive forces in him. that there is a, if we say there, the first person narrator always narrates himself as a participant, as a action of the story. As we compare as a third person narration, the narrator himself is not an active participant in the third person narrator. We don't see him actually there. This is the difficulty of saying anything about him. But Romy observes the whole action within his own eyes. And if we, in the words of K.S. Isnagar, Arun Joshi has carried his exploration of the consciousness of rootless people stage further and reveal our gaze a new chamber of self-prorate mystery. And we say, if we say, like on the other hand, we say the technique is plausible reason. On the another point is the technique is the plausible reason of the narrator to the crucial event used repeatedly by Arun Joshi. Romy has an easy access for all the events because he is a Billy's friend. In addition to that, another major tool of Romy's narrative, because he is a main narrator, and like if we say the Billy is a protagonist and he has his own different facets of life. And we say, like we say, the Joshi uses this first person narrator, helps him to achieve objectivity. The main thing is objectivity. He himself as an author is never seen in the novel. As I already said, he puts in the name of the character is a Romy Sahai. He is an autobiographical in some sense. The novel is some sense autobiographical novel because Arun Joshi puts his words in the mouth of Romy Sahai. And as we say, the strange case of Billy Biswas is not only seems to explore the house of fiction, but comfortably at home there. And Romy Sahai, the narrator of the novel, provides Joshi a complete objective, impersonal stature or as an author. We say he never loses objectivity, and the part of the narration which relevant the main plot of the novel. And as we say, a sense of identification is another as establishing what has happened to Billy most of the time. And the difference is that the desire for primitive in Billy gets an externalization. In externalization, the narrator has made it clear in the beginning that this protagonist is a victim of cosmopolitan life. Now, because he doesn't want that middle class life, he all the time he starts, because he's interested in anthropology, he starts searching for something like you can say architecture type or something, stones and something like the other so many things. And technically, if we say like the cosmopolitan culture which does not care an individual aspirant, this becomes clear that in the words of Romy Sahai, it is an account of deep and unrevealed sense of wonder that in the middle of the 20th century, in the heart of Delhi smart society, if we say there should be a lived man for such an extraordinary observation. And we can say Billy, fed up with the monotony of city life, wants to leave it. The narrator has very objectively narrated this tale as a man who suffocated by a modern materialistic society. And on the sum up, in the end, I would like to say the strange case of Billy Biswas is a remarkable novel. The narration is in the novel doesn't follow the straight line. Instead of piece together a jigsaw puzzle. The same sense of event recount the different character to say a strong emphasis on the central character as well as the subject matter. And we say the technical skills of Arun Joshi certainly works the reader to relying upon the Romys, because Joshi has to make Romy reliable in the eyes of the main thing is reader. The two things at the end I would like to say, there are in the main motive is how the first person is reliable, how authentic he is while telling all the tale and he all the tale he is a mirror of the eyes of the author, and the narrator in some limit to the action we are expected to realize what he told in the story. The main objective is how reliable, how authentic is the main first person narrator vis-a-vis the other form of narrator. This is the main thing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gitanjali idea. And I have a question. You just said the protagonist is a victim of cosmopolitan culture, isn't it? The protagonist has become the victim of cosmopolitan culture, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you just elaborate on it?
Yeah, the protagonist is, as we say, you can say protagonist is a Billy Biswas. The Billy Biswas has always at that the time I would like to quote, in the New York, he's always transferred his you can say his course from a civil engineering to anthropology. This is the first thing, and the second thing we can say he moves to in New York a small tribal society where he meets his first girlfriend. This is another point where Romy Sahai observing a primitive forces in Billy Biswas. And there are so many examples in the novel I can prove, like there are so many things because Billy has this fed up with this cosmopolitan life. He is not happy as an assistant, as a professor as in Delhi University. That's why he shut up all the things, his marriage due in middle class life, and he moves to the Madhya Pradesh for an expedition, and he lives there, and somebody assumes that he's a dead. So that there are so many examples.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you,
ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving this opportunity in this pandemic. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
We are looking forward to so many opportunities like this only.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Right. Now, shall we move to the next participant, ma'am? Prasanna, ma'am?
Hello.
Yeah. The next participant is Mr. Sahil Bhagat from PhD scholar, Central University of Jammu and Kashmir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah, you're audible. You may continue.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, I will read the paper. I will read my paper, ma'am. Okay.
Yeah, please don't take more than 10 minutes.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Sure. Hello.
Audible, sir. You may begin.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. The title of my paper is Writing for Impact, Chronicling the Emergence of Climate Fiction in Literature. So here I start. Bill McKibben, in his book, The End of Nature, points out how nature has come to an epoch of ecological destruction and writes, I quote, "We have changed the atmosphere and thus we are changing the weather. By changing the weather, we make every spot on Earth man-made and artificial. We have deprived nature of its independence, and that is fatal to its meaning. Nature independence is its meaning. Without it, there is nothing but us," unquote. Global warming and many other human-driven changes to the environment are raising concerns about the future of Earth's environment and its ability to provide the services required to maintain viable human civilizations. The consequences of this unintended experiment of humankind on its life support system are hotly debated in academia and scholarly circles. But worst-case scenarios paint a gloomy picture for the future of contemporary societies. Additionally, climate crisis and the related challenges have now been the focus in the post-human world. Over the last few decades, science fiction has been around as a prominent genre in the literature. However, the settings of this fiction, like anthropogenic catastrophes, man-made disasters, post-apocalyptic and dystopic settings, call for the need of a new and fictional subgenre in literature to highlight the social, cultural, and political complexities of climate change. This new genre, called climate fiction or cli-fi, provides speculative insights into a grim present which warns us for the worst future. The shift from sci-fi to cli-fi produces climate change narratives in a very short time with a prime focus on the age of anthropocentrism, causing climate change in particular and environment neglect in general. Climate change fiction emerges and cogitates about global warming related issues and their repercussions. The name to the genre was first given by Dan Bloom, a writer and activist who first began a blog on cli-fi and maintains that, I quote, the 21st century will be known as Age of Cli-fi. I unquote. The present paper seeks to study the emergence of climate fiction as a distinct genre in literature and how it creates awareness among the masses for action. Amitav Ghosh, in his book, The Great Derangement, mounted a very strong case for the necessity of climate fiction and equally strong indictment of literary fiction for its failure to rise to this challenge. He argues that, I quote, ours was a time when most forms of literature were drawn into the modes of concealment that prevented people from recognizing the realities of climate change, unquote. Climate change now occupies a primary position, not just on political and scientific agendas, but in the wider cultural imagination. Just 5 years ago, Robert Macfarlane bemoaned the dearth of creative response to climate change, asking, I quote, where are the novels, the plays, the poems, the songs of this massive contemporary anxiety, unquote. Now it seems apparent that climate change and its effects are being articulated in a range of literary and critical works. The past 2 decades have seen an increasing amount of fiction dealing with this issue and a particular explosion in the number of such novels in the past 10 years. Treatment of catastrophic climate change in science fiction have tended to be organized around 3 main tropes: the drowned world, the freezing world, and the warming or burning world. Of these only, the first has a deep history in the Western mythos dating back to the Genesis story of Noah and arguably before it to the Epic of Gilgamesh. Not unexpectedly, it is in the 1970s too that the history of climate change fiction begins its earnest. The first novel to engage directly with what we now call climate change is Arthur Herzog's Heat, a plausibly imagined future history dominated by global warming. Another milestone novel is George Turner's The Sea in the Summer, which oscillates between far and near futures, beset by dramatically rising sea levels. The science fiction representations of climate change we have surveyed thus far have tended to depict climate change in a relatively straightforward terms of settings. In this century, however, Robinson has emerged as science fiction's most important writer to deal explicitly with the problem of climate change, not simply as the premise for an otherworldly setting, but as a social, cultural, and political phenomena and problem requiring unusual methods of characterization and plot. A similar innovative response is Paolo Bacigalupi's very recent The Wind Up Girl, winner of both Hugo and Nebula Awards, a vivid picture of climate change future in which energy scarcity, rising sea levels, and genetically modified disease and food resources have transformed human experiences. Stephanie Bernhardt believes that climate change will induce a literary shift in the literary world. She argues, I quote, as our experience of climate change proceeds from scientific observation and prediction to the lived reality of frequent weather disasters, climate literature of the future will look increasingly like war literature from the past. Its central concern will be so obvious and so painfully to the readers that it will hardly need to be named, unquote. A historical survey of climate change fiction has so far dealt with what is designated genre fiction that is clearly identifiable with a given literary form. In this case, the well-defined genre of science fiction, as well as thrillers and satirical comedy and teen novels. However, some novelists, particularly those who are often thought of as literary or serious fiction writers, are not often read or critiqued in terms of genre. Examples of literary fiction that deals in less direct fashion with climate change are Maggie G's The Ice People and The Flood, Doris Lessing's Mara and Dan, and its sequel, The Story of General Dan's and Mara's Daughter, Margaret Atwood's Oryx and Crake and the Era Flood. More direct engagements with the current crisis can be found in T.C. Boyle's A Friend of the Earth, set in 2025, when the Earth has been devastated by global warming brought on by extreme deforestation, And Janet Winterson's The Stone Gods, which depicts Earth in the far future, so destroyed by climate change that is no longer able to sustain life. Finally, worth noting too are a handful of recent climate change novels by less well-known but promising literary authors, amongst them Sarah Hall's The Carnal Army, Sarah Moss' Cold Earth, and Marcel Theroux' Far North. The novels listed here tend to adopt future history approaches to climate change, depicting substantially or spectacularly altered climate change settings. But it should be noted that they also go on to deal in formally innovative ways with the challenges these present to their protagonists. Antonio Mahnert, in his book Climate Change Fiction's Presentation of Global Warming in American Literature, investigates the ways in which literature, I quote, make an important contribution to our understanding of climate change by depicting how future generations might adapt or might fail to adapt to climatic changes, unquote. If we accept that cli-fi is a thematic variety or subgenre of dystopic fiction, it still remains a special case in comparison to political, feminist, or techno-dystopias because...
Excuse me, sir. Yeah. Here's a request that the presenter should unmute your video.
Sorry, ma'am, please.
Yeah, please unmute your video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Am I visible?
Yes, you are visible.
Okay. Even though cli-fi tends to treat climate change as a global threat, narratives often remain on a local level when exploring the impact of natural disasters, foregrounding the survival of the nuclear family and its way of coping with the crisis. Cli-fi texts are also contemporary in the sense that they are overwhelming, set in the present or very near future, which distinguishes them from the precursor texts such as Dune, which usually rely on distant futures and outer space settings, with examples including popular Hollywood films like The Day After Tomorrow, novels such as Kim Stanley Robinson's Green Earth, and Barbara Kingsolver's Flight Behavior, and hybrid science fiction formats such as Historians of Science, The Collapse of Western Civilization. Cli-fi has been particularly prolific in recent North American literatures and cultures, which is why a closer examination of this newly emerging genre from the interdisciplinary vantage point of American culture studies is warranted. Many scholars, writers, and theorists contend that the new visibility of climate change in popular culture demands new categories, which brings up questions of genre. The terminological spectrum of the often hotly debated new terms comprises substantially distinct approaches extended from established literary and film genre designations, such as speculative and science fiction, disaster film, or nature writing, to a newly coined expressions and neologism, such as to a name, but a few, everything, eco-fiction, eco-poetry, eco-drama, eco-media, eco-cinema. Literary rubrics such as petrofiction, the risk novel, and Anthropocene fiction, and cinema and media studies monikers including eco-genres and eco-trauma cinema. Environmental humanities offer conceptions of interdisciplinary critical approaches that address climate change narratives such as eco-criticism, petrocriticism, extinction narratives, and many of these contested keywords and concepts intersect with discussions of cli-fi, lending precision to the analysis of the text. So I conclude here, the end of the last decade, which saw the publication of McEwan's Solar and the performance of Waters' The Contingency Plan, paved the way in this decade for climate change to emerge as an important and urgent topic for writers, playwrights, and poets. Literary scholars have responded with an increase in the number of analyses of such literary texts. The eco-critical analyses are partially responsible for an emerging canon of climate change fiction. The problem of complexity underpins the field of climate change criticism, which is centered on the idea that climate change is a slippery concept posing not just a literary but an existential challenge. However, this review of climate change fiction, drama, and poetry suggests that literature is concerned not just with climate change representation and existentialist challenges, but with its emotional and psychological dilemmas. Climate change fiction and drama, with their preoccupations with parenthood, and climate change poetry, with its dominant tone of lament, all circulate around the problem of legacy of environmental degradation that humans today are handing on to the species of tomorrow, human and non-human. It is this emotional concern with the future and its increasing prevalence in climate change literature that deserves closer scrutiny in literary studies as it continues its engagement with the global crisis of climate change. Fiction has imagined the risk we face, but the challenge remains for scientists, policymakers, fiction writers alike to imagine, conceptualize, and articulate the solutions. Thank you so much.
Yes, very good, Sahil sir. I got a question not related to the paper actually, the novel. Does Amitav Ghosh give any solution to the climate change and all? I mean, environmental crisis in this particular novel?
Yes, ma'am, please. You are not audible. The voice is echoing, please.
Okay. I'm repeating my question. And the question is not related to your paper, of course, to the novel. I mean, does Amitav Ghosh give any solution to environmental crisis in this particular novel?
No, actually, this is not the novel. This is non-fiction book, The Great Derangement.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. In which he argues that ours was a time when literature only. Hello.
Also the problem.
Hello.
Yes, continue, please. Yes, you are audible.
Hello.
Unmute yourself.
No, ma'am.
Hello.
Actually, ma'am, Ghosh says that literature were drawn into modes of concealment at that time, in their time, but that people these and those texts prevented people from recognizing the realities. He says that climate fiction is not a fiction, but it is a reality.
Hello, I have a question. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible. You may, yeah.
Okay, I just want to ask a question in terms of like, have you read on indigenous science fiction as you read all of this about climate change and everything? Because they have a very unique approach to the way, like it's very different from the Western concept of how they deal with the environment, how they conquer the environment, all that. Indigenous science fiction always looks towards a more cohabitation and cooperation with the environment, coexistence and all of that. So within their case, things like global change and everything, like the philosophies are quite different. Have you incorporated that in your paper? I mean, like, have you looked upon that in your paper and how it, melds with whatever you're doing right now?
Mrs. Sahil, I think you have to answer. Mrs. Sahil Bhagat?
Hello.
Yeah. So there was a question for you.
No, it was not audible, ma'am. Hello.
Sir, if you have a question, can you just put it in the chat box? So that it will be easy for the person to answer. If you have any questions, please put in the chat box so that it will be easy for the person to answer. Yeah.
Actually, there is a network issue in Jammu. There is 2G only.
That's why.
4G actually.
Okay. So, Dr. Lal, if you have any doubts, you can just put the question in the chat box, and I think later maybe I will answer to you.
Yeah,
Mr.
please.
Sahil may answer. Yeah.
Please,
yeah. Please post your question in the chat box, and your questions will be surely answered. Okay, Prasanna ma'am, shall we move on to the next candidate now?
Yes, ma'am, we shall move.
Yeah. I think people have network issue, so we'll move on to the next candidate, all right? So the next candidate is Samina Khan, PhD scholar, University of Jammu and Kashmir.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, but please present yourself.
Okay, ma'am. Let me share my slides. Give me a few seconds.
Presenters, you're supposed to unmute your video, all right?
Basically, ma'am, I'm in a 2G network area and I'll not be able to share my video. I'll share my slide. Please some time. Just wait. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, you just started sharing. Just started sharing it.
Are you able to see the slides?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, proceed, please.
The title of my paper is The Post-Human Paradigm Shift, New Human in Literature. Okay, the idea of end of man and emergence of future man or post-human has become the subject of recent investigation. But I think this concept is not new. It has been dealt by Nietzsche a century before. Friedrich Nietzsche, in his book The Genealogy of Morals, prophesied the birth of post-human or future man. He states, I quote, "This future man who in his wise will redeem us from the old ideal, as he will from that ideal's necessary corollary of great nausea, will to nothingness and nihilism, this toxin of noon and of the great verdict, which renders the will again free, who gives back to the world its goal, and to man his hope. This is Antichrist and anti-nihilist. This conqueror of God, of nothingness, he must one day come," unquote. So here we can see this is the prophetic vitalist craving the coming of the overman or the post-human, and who despises sickness, glorifies strength, will, and power, and plays with nihilist fire. So I think there seems to be an inherent compulsion in the human condition to try and understand human existence. From diverse epochs of human history comes evidence of attempts to make sense of what we are and how we relate to the world. Earlier, humans saw forces of nature controlled by gods as determining human existence and subjecting them to their whim. By enhancing technical capabilities, the story goes, humans gained increasing confidence in their ability to exert control over those forces and impose their will on nature. In the humanist period of Western development, where science advanced and deities held less sway, it even became possible to think of ourselves with intelligence and skills as coming to dominate a fickle and violent nature. So today, the possibilities suggested by synthetic intelligence, organic computers, and genetic modification are deeply challenging to that sense of human predominance. So these developments awaken deep-rooted anxieties about the threat to human existence from technology we cannot control or understand. So humans are capable of creating entities that may equal and even surpass them. And there is possibility that attributes like human thought may be created in non-human forms. While this is one of the deepest fear, but it is also the holy grail of the computer sciences. As we all know that recently numerous scientific and technological advances have been taken place, and the idea of man as the measure of all the things has been challenged by flourishing manifestations of post-humanism. Therefore, what it means to be human has been questioned by various theoreticians like Carrie Wolf and Catherine Hales and Donna Haraway. In this regard, concepts like self, other, human, non-human, body, mind, it can be analyzed in the framework of post-humanism. So Ehab Hassan's article, Prometheus, Ehab Hassan is a Egypt-born American literary theorist and critic. And in his article, Prometheus as Performer Towards a Post-Humanist Culture, a University Mask in 5 Scenes, is often regarded as the original announcement of post-humanist culture. So his remarks are worth recalling. I quote, we need first to understand that human form, including human desire and all its external representations, may be changing radically and thus must be revisioned. We need to understand that 500 years of humanism may be coming to an end as humanism transforms itself into something that we must helplessly call post-humanism, unquote. So the word post-humanism, first of all, the word post-human is employed to describe a number of things at once. First, it is used to mark the end of that period of social development known as humanism. And so in this sense, it means after humanism. Humanism is basically a broad category of ethical philosophies that affirm the dignity and worth of all people based on the abilities to determine right and wrong by appeal to universal human qualities, particularly rationality. Second, this term post-human, it refers to the fact that our traditional view of what constitutes a human being is now undergoing a profound transformation. It is argued that we can no longer think about being human in the same way we used to. Third, the term refers to the general convergence of biology and technology to the point where they are increasingly become indistinguishable. In this sense, the term post-human is preferable to post-biology insofar as the decaying category of human can be seen merely a subset of increasing. Are you able to see my screen? Hello?
If not now.
No, ma'am.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me share it once again. I got up. Okay. Are you able to see it? Hello?
Yes.
It's getting shared. It's getting shared. Yeah. Begin.
Okay. So in this sense, the term post-human is preferable to post-biology insofar as the decaying category of human can be seen merely a subset of increasingly virulent technobiology of which the present generation might be but a transient phase. Thus, we can say that post-human doesn't really mean the end of humanity, but it signals instead the end of certain conception of the human. So post-humanism emerges from a recognition that man is not the privileged and protected center because humans are no longer and perhaps never were utterly distinct from animals, machines, and other forms of inhuman. As far as 21st century's literature is concerned, much more importance is given to non-human forms like machines, animals, and other forms of non-human are being treated equal to human in different works of fiction. Okay. Sorry, ma'am. I am again and again getting a call, and that is the only reason my screen. Sorry, ma'am. Let me share it once again. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. Okay. Are you able to see it now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. In the present paper, I'm going to describe Accelerando as a post-humanist novel. Basically, Accelerando, it is a science fiction novel. It is written by Charles Stross. Charles Stross is a British novelist who is mainly known for his hardcore science fiction. First of all, the title of the novel in Italian, Accelerando means speeding up and is used as a tempo marking in musical rotation. But in Stross's novel, it refers to the accelerating rate at which humanity in general or the novel's characters headed towards the technological singularity. Now, what is technological singularity? Basically, technological singularity, it is a hypothetical point in time at which technology technology growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible. So it results into unforeseeable changes in human civilization. So this book is divided into 9 parts. The first 3 parts follow the characters of Manfred, Max, and Pamela starting in the 21st century. The second 3 parts follow Manfred's daughter Amber, and final 3 focus largely on Amber's son Sirhan in a completely transformed world at the end of this 23rd century. Okay, in Accelerando, the theme of technological development is highlighted through numerous characters and incidents that have been developed. The notion of techno-colonialism. The word techno-colonialism, this term has been coined back in 90s, and this term was, at that period of time, this term was used to describe the exploitation of poorer cultures by richer ones through the use of technology. But in this paper, I have used this term to describe the exploitation of humans by the post-humans. Post-humans in these novels are the humans. They are also humans, but they are half human and half machines. They are chip-headed people. They have uploaded their mind. They can update their mind, and they can get the latest version of their mind. They are kind of post-humans. And the discussion between Sirhan and Pamela delineated that the excess of technological advancement may lead to destruction of sublime phenomena like humanity and relationships. Pamela has specifically referred to the period of pre-singularity when she says, I quote, humans were real humans, work was real work, and corporations were just things that did as we told them, unquote. So in the second part of the novel, that is more philosophical than technological, through the old version of Pamela, the mega narratives of technological development that has led to techno-colonialism is put to proof. The subversion of world's economy is one of the basic traits of the novel that has projected the idea that due to technological progress, the techno-colonizers or the post-humans will rule upon the world through technology to the extent that the economy of the entire world will fail to sustain. Eventually, the world will fall a victim in the hands of such elite techno-colonizers. Accelerando frequently represents the capitalism and multinational consumers culture. I quote, Manfred has a suite at the hotel paid for by a grateful multinational consumer protection group and an unlimited public transport pass paid by a Scottish samba punk band in return for services rendered.
Samina Khan. You aren't audible. Samina Khan. Dr. Prasanna Devi, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. Yeah, I think she has some technical, yeah, she's not, I think she has some technical issues, right? Yes. Hello, Ms. Samina Khan, are you there?
Ma'am, shall I call her via WhatsApp and check on her?
Yeah, please.
Yes.
I think she's about to, yeah, I think she's about to wind up.
I'll just confirm, ma'am. 1 second.
Okay, okay.
Ma'am, Dr. Lal has posted his question in the chat box. If Sahil is there, he may answer. Meanwhile,
The answer is who's supposed to answer? Mr. Sahil Bhagat, isn't it?
ma'am.
Yeah. Ms. Sahil Bhagat, are you there? Ms. Sahil Bhagat? Let's find out. Ms. Sahil Bhagat, are you there? Yeah, people in Jammu, you know, they're facing a lot of technical issues and I don't think he's here. I think he left the meeting. Yeah.
Ma'am, she is joining Net's got disconnected, it seems. She's joining within. She's joined, ma'am.
Okay.
Samina Khan, please unmute yourself. Yes, come back. Yes, not unmuted.
Okay, hello. Am I
Yes.
audible? I'm so sorry, ma'am. This is the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. We are in 2G network area and we are having such kind of problems. I'm so sorry.
But you're doing a wonderful job. You're doing a wonderful job. Carry on.
Thank you, ma'am.
We
Thank
love
you.
you, speak.
Thank you. Okay, one of the noteworthy discursive aspect of the novel is the deconstruction of the humans through post-humans. The post-humanity depicted in the novel suggests a novel kind of colonization. This colonization is technology-oriented, and post-humanity or post-humans are the neo-colonizers.
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am. Can you please flip your phone? It is upside down. Can you please flip your phone? The presentation is not great.
Are you able to see it?
No, we are able to see the presentation, but it's like upside down. Can you like flip your phone or rotate the yeah.
Now is it right?
No. Once again. Can you just flip it because it's
Ma'am, in my phone it's like I don't know. It's
okay. Yes, it's okay, ma'am. I'm sorry. You can continue.
It's just carry on.
Is the slide is okay?
Are you don't bother about your slide. Don't bother about your slide. Just carry on. Just carry on.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. This colonization is technology oriented, and post-humanity or post-humans are neo-colonizers or the techno-colonizers who has taken hold of the entire world through technology. Consequently, the present form of physical humans will be totally vanished until the 23rd century. It is through Sirhan that the phenomena of post-humanity is classified. He says, I quote, "We are by disposition a conservative species because in a static ecosystem that provides the best return on sunk reproductive investment costs, yes, we change over time. We are more flexible than any other animal species to arise on Earth, but we are like granite statues compared to organisms adapted to life under economics," unquote. Equivalent to the projection of post-humanity is the deconstruction of humanity as suggested by Manfred. He says, I quote, "Humans will be obsolete as economic units within a couple more decades." The discourse further narrates that by the 6th decade and the 3rd millennium, the human species will be completely outdated. I quote, "The damn fool human species has finally succeeded in making itself obsolete." So Pamela, who is wife of Manfred, Pamela has highlighted the decomposition of humans, meta-humans or augmented humans by the wild offsprings. She has highlighted this decomposition through the discursive practice of ethnic cleansing. She says, I quote, "Ethnic cleansing, you take people who you define as being of little worth. First, you herd them into a crowded ghetto with limited resources. Then you decide those resources are not worth spending on them and the bullets are cheaper than breads," unquote. She has termed these wild offsprings as mind children, the very product of technological development and mind upload trends of humanity's own begotten offsprings that one day will perish, humans considering them to be worthless. Thus, these wild offsprings are the agents of techno-colonization that will engulf the humanity through the excess of technological progress. The theme of post-humanism further gets momentum when Ainco, the AI, artificial intelligence cat, is represented as toying with the life of Manfred and Pamela. The cat has the power and control over the lives of Manfred and Pamela that is representative of colonial hegemony. Sirhan has projected that cat's superhuman powers as, I quote, "What I mean is Ainco is a human equivalent or better artificial intelligence. Why do you think she keeps a cat's body? Because humans always underestimate anything that's small, furry, and cute," unquote. Amber Max, Pamela and Manfred's daughter, she is also associated with the theme of post-humanism. She enters into the scene in the second half of the
Excuse
text.
me. Excuse
Yes,
me.
ma'am.
Excuse
Yes,
me.
ma'am.
Please try to wind up. Please
Okay,
try
ma'am.
to wind up.
I'm
It's
left with
almost time, all right? Yeah, there are a lot
left
of.
with only
Yeah,
one
yeah.
character.
Please
So please
conclude.
give me some time. Okay. Her
Okay,
character
okay, please.
represents the
Yeah,
peak of
please, quick.
technological progress, as she is a post-human who has taken hold of the other galaxies and planets when the resources of the planet Earth are drained off. She is sole queen of Ring Imperium, a small planet in the orbit of Jupiter, where she rules she has deserted Earth. Thus, it suggests that she has colonized the other planets in order to use and plunder the available resources of Jupiter. Next character who is representation of post-humanism is Sirhan, the son of Amber and Sadiq. He is also a
Yes, ma'am. Excuse me. Sorry for interrupting again. Please try to wind up. You just leave out the character and try to wind up. Yeah, there are 10 more participants to.
Okay,
they'll have the present after you. All right, please try to wind up. Yeah.
Ma'am, this
You've
is
been
the
given
last.
only 8 minutes to present. Yeah,
Okay,
quick, please, quick.
The conclusion, this study has explored the representation of post-humans and analyzed it through the various discursive linguistic practices within the selected novel. The analysis of techno-colonialism has projected that the grasp of post-humans, techno-colonizers, in order to suppress and surpass the world through technological progress is very strong and potent. Therefore, none of the countries of the world are free from the grip of technological modification and advancement. Such kind of technological output has made the entire world an arena of techno-colonization where neither individuals are free citizens of the world nor the societies are free from technological encroachment. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
Ms. Amina Khan. It was very clear, very elaborate. The presentation was really wonderful. You have a long way to go. All the best.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Any questions? Any questions from the audience side? Okay, we'll move on to the next participant. The next participant is Mr. Manpreet Sharma. Mr. Manpreet Sharma, PhD scholar, University of Jammu and Kashmir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. You may proceed.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Please allow me to share my screen.
Yes.
Ma'am, is it visible? Is it visible?
No, sir, it's not visible. The PPT is not visible.
Not visible.
Is it visible now?
No, sir.
Sir, your phone is visible, but not the PPT. Yes.
Just a moment.
So why don't you start your presentation? Yeah, just begin your presentation.
So the title of I'm going to present is Learning from Life Accounts, Contextualizing Illness Narratives in Medical Humanities. So it has been already discussed that a paradigm shift is a radical change in the core concepts and practices of a given domain, discipline, or field. This is the need of the hour to
Mr. Manpreet Sharma, you're not audible.
Ma'am, this is the issue with the
Mr.
network
Sharma?
here. Again, hello. Am I audible, ma'am? Hello.
Yes, sir, you may
Hello.
continue. Yes, you may continue. You may proceed, sir.
Yeah. This is the need of the hour to undergo a drastic change in the way the works of literature are interpreted. Emerging technology and advanced research have resulted in the development of new understanding of human existence and its allied aspects. And consequently, various new dimensions are getting added to the existing pool of our knowledge, which were hitherto unexplained. Literature as a discipline cannot be taught in isolation, and the same is true for its learning. It has to be ever
Excuse me, sorry
encompassing.
for, excuse me, sir. Excuse me,
Yes,
sir.
ma'am.
Sorry for interrupting. Please unmute your video. We just want to see the presenter. Please unmute your video.
Again, I'll check if I'll be able to do that.
We can't see your presentation too. We can't see your presentation too, sir.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I have to continue like that. Network is actually not supporting me. It's raining very heavily here, and the network is 2G, so you can understand the situation. So I'm very sorry.
Okay, then continue, please. It's okay, then continue,
Yeah.
please. Continue.
Yeah, therefore, thrust should be upon a multidisciplinary approach in teaching and learning literature. Whatever new trends are emerging in any field of study, they must be reflected while delineating any literary text. This paper seeks to establish multidisciplinary nature of the literary text with particular emphasis upon the relation of humanities and medicine. It seeks to examine the transferability of conversations in literary studies to a more sensitive, holistic, ethically informed medical education. Let me elaborate medical humanities. And medical humanities is a genre that, broadly speaking, seeks to gather theoretical, critical, and practical insights from across the social sciences and humanities to explore the complex meanings that get attached to health, illness, disease, disability, and generally studied through narratives of patient or caregivers or medical professionals. Illness has been a topic of literature for as long as literature has existed. In Homer's Iliad, Apollo sends a plague to cripple the Greek army, and the Bible presents numerous accounts of sickness. Indeed, the figure of Job with his affliction of skin sores appears in both the Bible and the Holy Quran. Shakespeare's eponymous figure in Julius Caesar suffers from seizures. Serious illness is nearly always unexpected and thrusts a person into a position where he must confront several weighty issues: his own mortality, the potential end of his life, and the way he is living his current life. Often, a newly diagnosed patient must do while in the midst of facing a previously unknown world of caretakers, treatments, and consequences of the sickness. This actually has led to a rich tradition of literature about illness, and indeed, one can find either fictional or personal accounts of nearly every affliction imaginable. One of the most powerful forms for expressing suffering and experiences related to suffering is the narrative. Patients' narrative give voice to suffering in a way that lies outside the domain of biomedical voice. This is probably one of the main reasons for the emerging interest in narratives among social scientists engaged in research on biomedicine, illness, and suffering. The increasing reference to narratives in social psychological studies of medicine and illness is a specific example of the widespread interest in narratives now being shown by the social science scholars. A debate that has sprung up in recent years, particularly among philosophers, has concerned the possibility and value of grand theories and grand narratives. A number of authors have pointed out that the old grand narratives, say, for example, the theories of Marx, are no longer able to formulate and express experience and knowledge in a world that is become increasingly fragmented, polycentric, and mobile. This development is paralleled in the field of medical studies by doubts about the possibility of biomedicine to explain and cure ills and relieve suffering. The philosophers Taylor and McIntyre and others like them argue that we create frames for understanding and judgment and link them to the everyday circumstances of our lives by drawing on diverse moral and political discourses. The narrative's importance lies in its being one of the main forms through which we perceive, experience, and judge our actions and the course and value of our lives. Social scientists have begun to consider narratives as one of the ways in which we create and give meaning to our social reality. Common to most definitions of the narrative is an emphasis on the temporal ordering of events that are associated with change of any kind. When the narrative concept first began to appear in studies of medicine and illness, it was at the beginning of 1980s. It was generally subordinated theoretically to concepts like identity and self. But presently, the place of illness narratives in the works of medical sociologists, psychologists, and anthropologists is undisputed. In the past 10 years or so, the use of the narrative conception in the field of medicine and illness has changed in at least three respects, that is thematically, theoretically, and methodologically. Thematically, interest in the narrative has shifted since the beginning of the 1980s, and today less attention is being given to its use in the study of the clinical practice and experiences of doctors and more to patients' experience of suffering. Traditionally, the act of narrating as part of clinical practice has been a focal point for observations and discussion, but it is not like that now. The 1970s, again, saw a growing interest in narratives in connection with attempts to formulate a hermeneutic position on medical science and the patients. Several authors suggest that we conceive the patient as a text that can be read, which actualizes the narrative perspective. From a more critical perspective, written narratives in the form of pathographies and autopathographies have been studied in order to understand how doctors construct patients as part of the social reality. And narratives have gained importance in the study of chronic illness as a means for understanding the attempts of patients to deal with their life situations and above all with the problems of identity that chronic illness brings with it. By directing attention to the aspect of suffering, Arthur Kleinman, one of the very famous social psychologists, in his book Illness Narratives, has given the narrative concept a broader definition. For him, the narrative is the form in which the patients shape and give voice to their suffering. Theoretically, if we see, the narrative concept formerly occupied a peripheral position in the social scientific study of illness. But today, it plays a far more central role in that it captures central aspects of illness, experiences, and their social contexts. In earlier studies, the illness narrative itself was a secondary concern. The main focus was on the other aspects, such as how narratives figure in the identity work of chronically ill patients and whether doctors engaged in clinical work and through illness narratives came to occupy an increasingly centralized position in social science or not. Today, the narrative concept enjoys the pivotal position once assigned to concepts like identity. It could even be argued that the identity concept has become subordinate to the narrative concept. Any illness constitutes a disruption, a discontinuance of an ongoing life. This is the major issue that any critical illness brings in the life of the victim. So the current of life is obstructed, perhaps blocked altogether. And illness may revise our conceptions of what is changeable, and we may be forced to change the premises upon which we plan and evaluate our lives. Chronic illness usually changes the very foundation of our lives because the illness creates new and qualitatively different life conditions. our range of options no longer seems so wide and varied. We may be forced to look at the future from a totally different angle. Thus, even the past acquires new meaning as a part of lived life. All type of illness thus affect one of the fundamental aspects of life, its extension in time, its temporality. The experience of continuity and inner coherence is called into question, perhaps becoming invalid altogether. Illness can be experienced as a more or less external event that has intruded upon an ongoing life process. At first, the illness may seem to lack all connections with earlier events, and thus it ruptures our sense of temporal continuity. And if the rupture is not mended, the fabric of our lives may be ripped to shreds. It is in this context that narratives become particularly interesting. Narratives offer an opportunity to knit together the split ends of time, to construct a new context, and to fit the illness disruption into a temporal framework. To sum up, an important question in this connection is, what does the narrative accomplish, both with respect to the individual's interaction with others and to his or her construction of social realities? A few accomplishments that can be made of the illness narratives are: it transforms illness events and construct a world of illness. It reconstruct one's life history in the event of a chronic illness. And most importantly, it explain and understand the illness as a form of strategic interaction in order to assert or project one's identity. And lastly, it transform illness from an individual into a collective phenomenon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Manpreet Sharma. Presentation was good. And Prasanna Devi, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Any question from your? Yeah.
We move on to the next question.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next one. The next participant is Ms. Arsha Fatima Nizar, PhD scholar, University of Jammu, Jammu and Kashmir.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Ms. Arsha.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you are audible, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Am I visible, ma'am?
No.
I have started my video. Maybe because of the network.
Yes, you are visible, ma'am. We can't see your screen. You are visible.
Are you sharing your screen?
Actually,
are you sharing your screen, ma'am?
Ma'am, I'm not sharing my screen. I'm going to read from paper.
Okay, continue. Begin your presentation, ma'am.
The title of my research article is Paradigm Shift in the Themes of the Ladakhi Short Stories, Forsaken Paradise and Betty's Butter Tea. The development of early Ladakhi literature in English evolved only after the region was started to be explored by the Europeans between 1800 AD and 1900 AD. In the second wave of its development, the Moravian missionaries introduced a variety of written literature as a colonial motif to the local people, who introduced a variety who could only read Ladakhi. The contemporary English literature started evolving when the region was thrown open to outsiders or tourists by the Indian government in 1974, which ultimately led to the production of religious literature, historical literature, cultural literature, travel literature, and others. Later, in the literary scene of Ladakhi fiction in English, Abdul Ghani Sheikh's translated anthology of short stories Forsaken Paradise, published in 2001, and Lundup Gyalpo's Betty's Butter Tea, 2019, are the only two collections of short stories in English produced by the native Ladakhi writers at different point of time. While Forsaken Paradise can be called a pure colonial legacy, Betty's Butter Tea is a craft of cosmopolitan spirit. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, please, you may continue, ma'am.
You are audible, please continue.
This paper attempts to study the shift in the thematic concerns in both the collections. With the change brought up by the development and exposure of Ladakh, we see a remarkable shift in the themes of the short stories written by the two authors. The themes ranges from socialism to realism, regional to cosmopolitan, feudality to modernity, and both the texts brings to surface the Ladakhiness in English language in the backdrop of unexplored Ladakh. So basically my paper is divided into two sections. Section 1 is the introduction, in which I have tried to discuss the historical and cultural context of Ladakhi literature, mostly the history of Ladakh. And after that, the introduction of Urdu, Persian, Urdu and Persian language and Tibetan language also, due to the conquest of different rulers from in the 10th century by the Tibetan Empire, and then in the 16th century by the Islamic conquest of Ladakh, and then after the 16th century, it was invaded by the ruler of Dogra ruler of Jammu, and ultimately, it came under the territory of Jammu and Kashmir. So the introduction is a bit lengthy. So I have given a brief about all these things, and these consist the introduction. After that, along with this, I have explained the Ladakhi literature in English, how it emerged and developed in Ladakh with the historical writings, survey literature, and expeditions by 19th century travelers, and then Moravian missionaries for coming for the colonial motive of converting people into Christianity. So with that, the English language and English literature was introduced in Ladakh. And then after that, I have taken some mentioned some prominent scholars and foreign writers who have written about Ladakh in English language. So after that, I'll come to the themes of the short stories that I have taken to discuss. The region of Ladakh has been explored due to its significant religious and cultural similarities with Tibet. Since Tibet was inaccessible, Ladakh became a destination for learning Tibetan Buddhism and its literature in the early 19th century. The language of Ladakh has been explored into and is known by several names like Bodhi, Bodhi, and Ladakhi. Ladakh has a rich background of literature, art, architecture, trade, language, and culture, which has been brought into the limelight by Western scholars who compiled historical as well as literary books on Ladakh in the local as well as other languages like English, with focus on outside readership. As Ladakh appeared in English literature as late as the 19th century, initially in colonial records, travelogues, and later in historical accounts by Western scholars, barring a few. However, any work of fiction has been almost absent from the literary landscape of the region, as storytelling was largely confined to oral transmission, and the tales that were written were in native languages with limited outreach. In such a context, a work of fiction by a Ladakhi is like rains after a long spell of drought. The autobiographical travel account of Ghulam Rasul Galwan, Servants of Sahib, published in 1928, is the first literary work by a native which accounts the experiences of Galwan's adventure travels with foreign travelers. The literary scene of Ladakhi English literature, especially in fiction, remained a huge void for almost up to the millennium, when in 2001, Ravina Agarwal compiled, translated, and published a dozen of short stories of Abdul Ghani Sheikh, who used to write in Urdu language. Beti's Butter Tea, Stories from Ladakh by Lundub Gyalpo, is a pioneering work that paves the way for new dawn in English literature in Ladakh, a precursor to quench the long and persisting literary void in the cold deserts of Trans-Himalayas. Then I'll be discussing the themes here. Forsaken Paradise, Stories from Ladakh, is an anthology of compiled short stories, which is considered as an example of modern Ladakhi literature. Originally written in Urdu by Abdul Ghani Sheikh, a renowned historian, writer, and scholar of Ladakh, it was compiled and translated into English by Dr. Ravina Agarwal and published in 2001. It is a collection of 12 interesting stories comprising of a true portrait, Abhilay, The Wind, Name, Two Nations, One Story, Tales of an Adventurous Traveler, Coward Madman Fool, The Locked Trunk, The Smile, Hopes and Desires, A Forsaken Paradise, and A Man of Influence. The stories in this volume address the modern dilemmas of Ladakhi society. They reflect its composition and organization, its family structure, its caste stratification, and class division. In the introduction of this book, Agarwal writes, I quote, "Through this fiction, Ghani Sheikh has attempted to clear such a path, moving away from moralistic genres of literature to compose narratives like luminous mirrors that allow society to contemplate and transform its image. The mirror is a recurrent symbol in Ladakhi literature, where good writing is supposed to represent the truths of the phenomenal and transcendental world with crystal clarity," unquote. So Ghani Sheikh with his fiction weaves together truths and lies and therefore succeeds as an effective and acceptable mirror. His background is reflected in his writings. All the short stories in this collection are an amalgam of distinct themes with Ladakhi setting, and the recurrent theme in each story has been discussed separately. Number one, social characteristics. This include family structures, relationships, society, caste, religion, and culture, etc. The short story, for instance, Hopes and Desires, unveils the aspiration of a protagonist, Kunzes, a poor girl who portrays for deliverance of a brother from her impoverished life at the time of a special festival when new families and new relationships are formed. Through this story, the audience is made aware of the discrimination suffered by those labeled as low caste. Blacksmith, musician, and mendicant castes are stigmatized as impure groups. They are often prohibited from inhabiting the same social space as high caste aristocrats or common folks. Tradition and modernity. In the story A Forsaken Paradise, from which the title of the book is drawn, illustrates the clash between tradition and modernity between two generations of male leaders developed from both secular and sacred cultural icons. A father returns from years of meditation only to find a Ladakh that he cannot recognize. This father cannot live with his son of present generation affected with modernity. I quote, "The wisdom of the past has degraded," the father says. The story suggests that paradise is an illusion or temporary resting place. A true portrait, for example, has a mesmerizing character symbolizing the ancient Ladakh who dies a tragic death posing for cameras of filmmakers, photographers, and tourists. Cultural identity. Changes brought by development are recurrent themes in Ghani Sheikh's writings. Some of his stories depict a hopeful future where courage and honor prevail amidst corruption, greed, and hunger for power. For instance, in the story Coward Madman Fool, the protagonist Murad, an assistant engineer in Heidel project, never succumbs to the comfort of dirty money, unlike his colleagues who are not from Ladakh. Innocent and not an admirer of development at all, Abhilay is a story of an old grandmother belonging to the naive generation of Ladakhi Muslim household who has no desire for life outside the safety of her village. In the period of communal tension, she bears testimony to the sense of identification that Muslim households have felt with their Ladakhi homeland. Of nations and partition. The partition of India and Pakistan and its repercussions find a significant voice in the stories of Ghani Sheikh. These stories reveal the trauma of fragmented families, friendships, and the...
Excuse me, ma'am.
And paranoia.
Excuse me. Yep. Yeah. Excuse me. Please try to wind up. Please try to wind up, please. It's almost time. Please try to wind up.
So I would just read the things that I have analyzed. So, and paranoia that comes to taint the relation between different religious communities. The form of story within the story, narrating the pain and pain of separated brothers, uncles, and relatives, etc., across the border expresses the tension of partition. Another theme is religious and cultural plurality. Living in a multi-religious society, Ganesh's stories have characters from both Islamic and Buddhist groups. The Wind is a tale inspired by the social atmosphere of the boycott years, 1989 and 1990. The story tells the saga of how external politics and propaganda incited the flame of hatred among the people whose spirit of tolerance and harmony across linguistic, religion, and regional divides are known.
Excuse me, ma'am. Sorry for interrupting you again. Sorry for interrupting you again. There are many more presenters waiting. Please wind up, please.
Yes, ma'am. So, past and history, other than the mentioned themes, the past and history is also a recurrent theme in the stories of Ganesha. Then Betty's Buttertea, written by Lundu Kelpo and published in 2019, was originally written in English, and his themes are spiritual philosophy and tradition and modernity, adjustment and art, the local and the cosmopolitan, and Hello.
Yes, you are audible.
Nothing is audible. Yeah, Rashmi, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am, I'm going to wind this. Okay. So these are the themes in Betty's Buttertea, and the shift is from the thematic analysis of the anthologies of both Kanishek and Mundukyalpu. The shift in their approach is apparent. Earlier, the works of indigenous writers were mainly in Tibetan or Ladakhi and Urdu or Persian scriptures. However, with the exposure of Ladakhi people beyond their narrow windows, many students who had been given education outside Ladakh around 1980s and 90s are comfortably expressing themselves in the English or Hindi language, whereas Ladakhi or Urdu language is seen as a challenge. They feel comfortable writing on blogs, social networking sites, or expressing themselves through short stories and student magazines that are published on a yearly basis. Expressing themselves through a new translated into the English language have acquired great number of readership inside and as well as outside Ladakh. Apprehension of cultural destruction due to development is evident in both the anthologies. However, in the recent collection of stories by Gyalpo, the threat to environmental, ecological, and philosophical pressures are also audible. With the increasing influx of tourists year by year, the author cautions the audience as well as the visitors of the unprecedented threat to the delicate environment of this remotest Himalayan abode. Also, shift from the 19th century romanticization of Ladakh to the realities and idiosyncrasies of Ladakhi society is evident from the study of these short stories. Interaction among the characters of Kanishek belongs to different communities of the same society, while the characters of Gyalpo are beyond the local and regional. The stories were written by the authors at different stages in their literary
Excuse me,
career.
ma'am. Sorry for interrupting again. I'm really sorry for interrupting again. It's almost time. You're just exceeding the time. Please don't do it. Please. Please wind up.
Yes, ma'am. It's done, ma'am. One paragraph. The stories were written by the authors at different stages in their literary career. Both the anthologies provide common insights that change and development, tradition and modernity are the prior concerns of the writers and maybe of the people of Ladakh in general. Change is inevitable and development in modernity always comes with some cost. The short stories of both the writers are embedded into their separate cultural context, are replete with the themes of rich culture, tradition, and history of Ladakh. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Arsha Fatima Nizam, ma'am. Thank you. Nice presentation. We'll move to the next participant. The next participant is Rashmi Panwar, PhD scholar, Dow PG College, Dehradun, Uttarakhand. Ma'am, please. This is your time. Please don't exceed 8 minutes.
Okay. First of all, very good afternoon to everyone. And firstly, I would like to say thanks to all of you. And my topic is interface of culture and literature. Literature and culture are two inseparable issues when we talk about the culture. So literature can also appear unconsciously because the culture is composed of thoughts, feelings, and emotions and the style. and personal way of society, which as a general rule can appear in a terms of principle and respectful rules. The literature, on the other hand, discloses and transmits these concepts to other generation, and this relationship exists from beginning of history until now. According to above mentioned issue, the aim of this paper is to define the concept of culture and literature, and as well as the relationship between these two components in life of human beings. The interaction between literature and culture also impact of these two other is clear and undeniable, because and this is not limited to a specific geography. In fact, this interaction and impact can be observed in all over the world. As a matter of fact, the culture consists of people's belief, tradition in any society, and the literature, on the other hand, discloses these elements in terms of different literature. So, the literature is the interaction with impacting on culture. It is difficult to measure the impact of culture in different dimensions of people because there is no sufficient data in this area. In fact, culture establishes a situation in which the environment and economic, political, social, and even technological revolutions occur. Since cultural, since cultural changes guide the society's direction and transmits to future generation, and culture innovation can protect society from destruction. There are some elements inside the culture that are in harmony with each other and shape some beliefs, values, and these elements can be flourished by means of literature. In fact, culture is the outcome of a society. The of a culture are rooted in the thoughts of everybody in society. There is no doubt that the relationship between culture and literature makes their flourishing possible. In fact, this is a bilateral relationship because culture, on the one hand, establishes a situation in which writers and poets can flourish themselves, and literature, on the other hand, opens a new approach towards the world. And this helps to establish a new thought and the different components of any culture. There are different types of definitions about culture which are expressed by sociologists, psychologists, and other experts. According to Herodotus, the way of people's in life is called culture. Society, on the other hand, it's an organized collection of people in which they follow a special method of life. According to ethnographers, the culture is composed of a complex collection of knowledge, belief, arts, ethics, laws, and tradition that anybody in society can feel them. In other words, all knowledge and treasures and materials, spiritual values which are acquired during the history is called culture. According to Malinowski, culture is a collection of fundamental characteristics of different social groups and people's conception, beliefs, and tradition. It is a way of life in any society. So, any society composed of people who interact themselves, and in fact, there is a close relationship between these two concepts. It is impossible to continue a culture without a society. The main reason for this are latent and unique characteristics for every human being. Culture is a historical and social phenomenon which is dependent on economical, social characteristic of any society. In this sense, material and cultural aspects of culture area impact each other. According to above-mentioned definition, we can conclude that these definitions have some characteristics in common, and these characteristics are not limited in specific place. We can define culture, it's an organizer of common life in a society. According to what we consider, it is possible to say that it is a collection of people belief, traditions in any society. And it can be true in any society when culture, if the culture can be removed by complete destruction. So the concept of language express feelings of and emotions of any society. From the old history until now, the role of literature is undeniable in such a technological era, and the literature is so useful for expressing humanistic values. In fact, the purpose of literature in human beings' familiarity in different ways of living. In order to do this successfully, literature helps us by means of teaching critique, solidarity, empathy, and kindness. The interaction between cultures includes some ways, traditions, thoughts, and humanistic thoughts which contribute to transportation of these elements. Literature not only results from the society but also has an effect on it. Therefore, people take some champions as pattern. The impact of literature material on young people is much older. So we can suppose that reader consider literature as a redundancy of life rather than as a life retention. In other words, we can say that culture and literature both are two sides of a coin. Both are closely interrelated and each discipline is incomplete without each other. Culture is the study of past while literature is the study of written work. Culture builds society and whatever has happened in society or in culture, it reflects in literary works. This paper analyzes that literature and culture have the relationship from the beginning of human civilization. It represents society because it has the power and ability to visualize and imagine the cultural space of different communities, whereas culture can be defined as a record of real events that happened in past. Traditionally, we can consider that both are interrelated and it can be resolved by it because a writer can use his pen as to make our culture very strong. Because literature has a special place in our society to bring a charismatic change in the emotions and mindset of people. The key purpose of literature is to provide pleasure to the audience. It reflects society and human conditions. As it is mentioned in the context of this paper that the relationship between literature and culture is bilateral, so we can consider that the element of culture composed of some traditions, beliefs, and valuable literature materials help to flourish a culture. So we should believe that literature is independent in the culture of society. In fact, there are direct relationship between literature and culture. Both of them are in harmony with each other. The culture includes the belief, values of a society and literature. On the other hand, it expresses them in different literature shapes. Therefore, it finally leads to glory and outcome for a culture. I think it's enough for my presentation. Thanks a lot for giving me this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grace, for your presentation. Audience, if you have any questions, you can post it in the chat box. If you have queries. Great. Can we go on to the next presenter then?
Yes, please. Yes, please. So the next participant is Mr. Mridu Sharma.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Am I visible and audible?
Yes, yes.
A very good afternoon to the chair and to all the worthy members and presenters. The title of my topic is An Analysis of Paradigm Shift to Dystopian Fiction with Special Reference to Cormac McCarthy's The Road. Basically, my paper is divided into two sections. In the first section, I'll be analyzing the shift from utopia to dystopia that has taken place probably since modernism, because before that, the specific genre for literature was utopia, but after modernism and specifically in postmodernism, the instances of dystopian fiction have increased. The factors that have led to this will be dealt in the first section, and in the second section, since I have taken the text Cormac McCarthy's The Road, I'll be dealing with the dystopian elements in The Road. Am I audible, ma'am?
Please.
You are audible. Please continue.
Okay, ma'am, I'll be reading. I haven't made a presentation. I'll be reading my paper from paper.
Okay. Okay, it's okay. Please don't read it. Please just present it. All right.
Okay, ma'am.
Make it short. Present it. Please don't read it.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. I'll not read it. I'll just mention major points. With the shift from modernism to postmodernism, after the two world wars, there has been considerable upsurge in the instances of dystopian fiction in the literature of English. During the modernist age, comparatively, there were lesser number of dystopian texts because dystopia was presented as a warning to mankind as to what could happen in future. But since 1945 and afterwards, the number of dystopian texts have increased. Dystopian texts in modern age are seen not merely as warnings, but also as grave realities of 21st century with climatic change, global warming, pandemics, natural catastrophes, authoritarian regimes becoming the norm of the world. The term dystopia, bad place, is applied to works of fiction that represent a very unpleasant world in which ominous tendencies of present social, political, and technological order are projected into a disastrous future culmination. Dystopia is an imagined state or society where there is great suffering or injustice, typically one that is totalitarian or post-apocalyptic. Dystopia presents a harrowing tale wherein the characters are struggling to escape some sort of political control, totalitarian regime, apocalypse, scientific or technological disaster, oppression, etc. It has become an ever increasingly popular genre in the recent times. It is quite ironic that human civilization is experiencing massive technological advancement in all kinds of developments in diverse fields. Yet dystopia is one of the most favorite genres of postmodern world. In the introduction to their book, Dark Horizons, Science Fiction and Dystopian Imagination, Tom Moylan and Raffaella Bacchioni write, and I quote, "By 1984, a more clearly dystopian turn began to emerge with popular imagination of Anglo-American societies," unquote. The reason for this shift towards dystopian genre may be the two world wars and large-scale violence and bloodshed, totalitarian regimes, political control, or advancement of science and technology and its repercussions on humankind. As Louisa Mackay Demijaran writes in her book, The Age of Dystopia, Our Genre, Our Fears, and Our Future, and I quote again, "Dystopian works reflect society's worries. What do we have to worry about? Income inequality, the financial crisis, power in the hands of few anonymous wealthy elite group of party insiders in 1984. Science and technology are impacting our lives and changing who we are as people when few of us understand how these things, genetic engineering, software engineering, are done. Climate change, we don't know what the seasons will be like over time, and we don't know how many cities are going underwater or on the other end of the spectrum completely dried out. We don't know how our changing environment will impact food production, but we know there are pollinators at risk. Therefore, it is the chaotic state of human beings in the present scenario with respect to our economy, environment, polity, morality, ethos, and culture that has somehow brought the shift from utopia to dystopia. The dystopian writers just want to warn us of the consequences of the route that human generation is presently treading on. A similar opinion resonates in the book Dark Horizons, Science Fiction and Dystopian Imagination, in which Tom Moylan writes, and I quote, "By the end of 1980s, several science fiction writers confronted the decade's simultaneous silencing of utopia by turning to dystopian strategies as a way to come to terms with the changing reality. Works by writers like Octavia E. Butler, Robinson Piercy, and Le Guin refunctioned dystopia as a critical narrative form that worked against the grain of grim economic, political, and cultural climate," unquote. This was the first part, ma'am, of the paper, and now I'll be discussing the road and the dystopian elements that Cormac McCarthy has presented in the paper. In that text, it is a text written in 2005. It is a postmodern text, and that incorporates dystopian elements in its framework. It presents a struggling father and a son who are constantly struggling for survival in a decayed world. Then we know that they are called good guys and they're going towards south and they're trying to escape the bad guys. But what we don't know in the text, and it is presented as a mystery, is the fact that what has been the catastrophe, what has been the disaster, we don't know. The mystery and the suspense that the novel creates, it is what makes this novel postmodern. The element of postmodern is that all that the reader knows is that there is an apocalypse, but it is never made clear to us as what is the apocalypse, how it came, and how the world changed. But the world presented there is in the novel is very dark, nightmarish, ashen. As reader, we are completely surrounded by mystery with each word of the text. The atmosphere, tone, and mood of the novel is typically dystopian. Bleakness and darkness is reflected in almost every sentence of the text. In the very first page of the novel, McCarthy writes, and I quote, nights dark beyond darkness, and days more gray, each one than what had gone before. Unquote. Words like silent, barren, godless are constantly used to describe the place where the novel is set. Both the characters, the leading characters, are shown as leading wretched lives and trying to escape the bad guys. They are just moving on the road with their knapsacks and tarks, and they're struggling. As Erika Gottlieb writes in her book, Dystopian Fiction, East and West, Universe of Terror and Trial, and I quote, the universe of trial is imbued with nightmare atmosphere typical of dystopia. She further writes, and I quote, in this study, I suggest that the protagonist's trial as an emblem of injustice is thematically and symbolically the central device of dystopian fiction. Unquote. The world which they inhabit is dystopian in this sense. Cormac McCarthy writes, and again I quote, they were all the day on the long black road, stopping in the afternoon to eat sparingly. Unquote. The setting of the novel, more specifically, the landscape and the description is very vivid, terrible, and ominous, just as the one with the dystopian fiction should be. All the descriptions, they heighten the effect of dystopia. For instance, I'll quote an instance to support this. He sat in the leaves at the top of the hill and looked into the blackness. Nothing to see, no wind. Unquote. The protagonist has lost everything, his wife, his family, his house, his friends. All he has is his son. While discussing characteristics of dystopia, Erika Gottlieb again writes in her book Dystopian Fiction, East and West, The Universe of Trial and Terror, and I again quote, the protagonist's experience and fate is tragic in the sense that it deals with irrevocable loss on the personal level. He or she loses his position, his beloved, his freedom, and a loss possibly even worse than the loss of life, the loss of private individual identity. Unquote. There are numerous instances in the text that support the dystopian tone and the nihilistic tone of the text. All these incidents symbolize suffering, oppression, squalor that are the recurrent theme of any dystopian text. Christopher S. Ferns writes in the book Narrating Utopia, Ideology, Gender, Form in Utopian Literature, dystopian fiction portrays a society whose undesirability is far more clearly self-evident than the desirability of its utopian counterpart, while at the same time it presents a protagonist whose actively critical attitude towards it is far easier to endorse. Unquote. In this way, The Road can be looked upon as a dystopian novel, since the setting of the novel, the distrustful environment, the protagonist and his suspicion of other people around, landscape, themes, and other things are harrowing, dark, despairing, and ashen, and it can broadly be categorized as a dystopian postmodern novel. What is all the more pertinent is the fact that the apocalypse or catastrophe is nowhere explicitly described by McCarthy. It is only hinted slightly here and there, and that some disaster has ruined the world in which the novel is set. McCarthy keeps it open-ended or leaves it up to the reader to ponder as to what might have happened. He therefore fulfills the primary aim of dystopia, which is to warn the societies against the potential threats to humanity.
I'm sorry for interrupting. You're exceeding your time. Please try to wind up.
Ma'am, I'll conclude.
Yeah.
As Christopher S. Ferns writes in his book, Narrating Utopia, Ideology, Gender, Form in Utopian Literature, and I quote, dystopia in effect satirizes both society as it exists and aspiration to transform it. McCarthy succeeds in doing so and makes the warning all the more impactful by keeping it subtle and mysterious throughout the novel. The novel thus voices the discontents of the postmodern world. And to sum up, it can be said that the novel The Road by Cormac McCarthy highlights the tone, atmosphere, setting that all contribute to the overall dystopian effect of the novel. And the present paper tries to study the postmodern concerns and voice and the warnings that the readers are presented in the text of against some impending future catastrophe, and if humanity does not check its reckless actions in the name of technological advancement and its unbridled thirst for power, the consequences will be worse than that presented in the novel. Thank you, ma'am. That's it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. It was a wonderful presentation, and it had a lot of clarity, right? It had a lot of clarity, and all the best.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
So, Prasanna ma'am, shall we move on to the next candidate, or have any queries?
No, ma'am. We can move on to the next candidate. The next person will be Mr. Wakar Yunus Bhatt, PhD scholar from University of Jammu. Mr. Wakar Yunus, are you here?
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
I will take some time to have my PPT on board. Just.
Yes, sir. Sir, kindly please don't exceed 8 minutes.
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Considering the time space, I'm totally familiar, and I agree. I will be just as instant as I can. Okay. The title of my paper reads, "Enduring the Crisis, a study of Farida Khalaf's The Girl Who Beat ISIS, My Story." In this intimate memoir of survival, a former captive of the Islamic State tells her harrowing and ultimately inspiring story. In its opening chapters, the dismantling of the lives of Farida and her fellow Yazidis is nightmarishly rapid and complete. When ISIS arrived in Kocho, a place in Iraq, the villagers are rounded up and given the chance to convert to the terrorist brand of Islam. The convictions of these terrorists are essentially hollow and inconsequential, as they are intrinsically shattered by the Quran and the Prophet. For example, Baghdadis, a self-proclaimed caliph, vehement encouraging of the brutal killings and spreading corruption and menace, is totally against Quranic teachings. Quran condemns such acts and labels such kind of people as hypocrites. I quote, "Now there's a kind of man whose views on the life of this world may please thee greatly, and the more so as he cites God as witness to what is in his heart, and is, moreover, exceedingly skillful in argument. But whenever he prevails, he goes about the earth spreading corruption and destroying property and progeny. God does not like that corruption. And whenever he is told, be conscious of God, his false plight drives him into even greater sin." The Prophet is also reported to have said, "Do you know what is better than charity and fasting and prayer? It is keeping peace and good relations between people, as quarrels and bad feelings destroy mankind." Prophet is also reported to have said, "The most hateful of men in the sight of God is the most contentious and quarrelsome fellow." So when they refuse, again coming to the story, when they refuse the proselytizing of the ISIS, the men and older boys, including Farida's father and oldest brother, are killed, and the unmarried women and girls, including Farida and her friend Evin, are loaded onto a bus at gunpoint. Their destination is the human market of Raqqa, the new caliphate's de facto capital in northern Syria. There, they are sold as sex slaves. When the girls arrive in Raqqa, they have been so sheltered by their traditional upbringing that they have only a misty concept of what awaits them. Farida remembers, I quote, "Neither Ibn nor I had a precise idea of what rape actually meant. She further exclaims, I quote, all we know is that we must not in any circumstances allow them to touch our bodies. If we fail to prevent them from doing that, our entire families would be dishonored. I unquote. Their fate soon becomes horribly clear. Girls of 13 and 14 quickly snapped up by high-ranking fighters. At 18 and 24, Farida and Evin are considered undesirably old, but eventually they are also sold. Though she is epileptic, Farida resists their captures with all her might. She fights, kicks, punches, screams, argues, constantly attempts to escape and tries numerous times to take her own life, efforts that win her only beatings to the point of death. What amazes both Farida and the reader are the glimpses of normality amidst this horror. When her first buyers drag her from the slave market, she can hardly believe that the sun is still shining and that Raqqa, the sinister capital of terror, has ordinary shops and kayaks selling everything from snacks to football shorts. Similarly, there are hints that life under ISIS control is more complex than it appears. The girls meet civilians forced to work for the group and fighters who have joined under duress. One, a young Syrian man, even tries in a limited way to be kind to them. Their escape, engineered by the perpetually brave and resourceful Farida, leaves them in equally ambiguous territory, dependent on the Kurdish people's smugglers who rescue runaways from ISIS for thousands of dollars ahead. The hard-headed telephone haggling over the girl's fate between the smugglers and their surviving family members is one of the book's more subtly shocking passages. Eventually, in a bleak refugee camp in Iraqi Kurdistan, Farida is reunited with the remains of her family. But freedom brings the book's final disturbing twist. The escapees are stigmatized by their traditional community and tormented by guilt over their inability to stop the rapes and the resulting dishonor of their families. With little medical or psychological support and no future, their only chance is to hope for the resettlement in Europe. Amid the policy wrangling over how to combat ISIS, the cynical calculations of the international powers embroiled in Syria and Iraq, this is a compelling testament to the suffering of ordinary people caught up in violence far beyond their control, and to the particularly terrible price it exacts from women. So coming to the conclusion, this paper examines the relationship between memoir and literary history by investigating whether and to what extent the novel as a literary and cultural form has been affected by changing patterns of the distribution and readership of texts. Farida's story as a witness to the Islamic State's brutality, a survivor of rape, a refugee, a Yazidi, has forced the world to pay attention to an ongoing genocide. It is a call to action, a testament to the human will to survive, and a love letter to a lost country, a fragile community, and a family torn apart by war. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Very contemporary and timely paper too. And I have got a very small suggestion. While preparing PPT, don't use long winding sentences. Just use small phrases in bullets.
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Certainly, I will from the next time. I was just trying to wind up it as soon as possible. So I just got it wind up just like this, and I was presenting instantly. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. And I would like to thank you too, because it was the choice of your area of study is really interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ma'am, shall we move on to the next candidate?
Yes, ma'am. Next presenter is Ms. Mehak Bola, PhD scholar, Guru Gobind Singh, Indraprastha University, Delhi.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening to Dr. David and Dr. Devi as well. My name is Mehak, and the title of my paper is Diaspora Collaborating with Transnational Feminism, a Study of Baldwin's, What the Body Remembers. Gender as a phenomena appears to be in a constant state of negotiation with body, language, as well as with embodiment. Throughout the extensive course of history, gendered constructions have been depicted amidst literature against certain cultural constructions. As every literary text is produced out of crucial cultural conditions, the notion stands true also in the case of gender studies. The binary which runs between the masculine and the feminine and its various nuances hereby contribute in problematizing the literary field. Various texts lay out similar concerns of depicting the internalization of certain codes. The very term, quote unquote, code becomes a key issue whilst engaging with gender studies, as it is imperative in any study of gender. The idea of masculinity and femininity is more or less a construction and replication of certain codes of behavior. Such codes can be recognized in conduct, dressing, language, embodiment, etc. Essentially, there are a few critical features of relatively defined code system. The codes, along with a few other latent features, combine together in order to problematize the male-female binary, besides concealing their constructed quality. Thus, it becomes critical to identify the gendered identities as not natural givens but a notion which is artificially constructed. Only it is so endlessly ritualized, internalized, and replicated that after a certain period, their constructed quality precedes any interrogation. In other words, their construction is consumed inarguably. However, upon placing it under scrutinization, an entire series of questions arise to surface. For instance, one begins to think to what extent is gender biologically determined and to what extent is it culturally determined. This in turn leads one on to contemplating if there is a cultural component to gender, or is it entirely a cultural construction or a balancing point between the two. The present paper attempts to examine such differences from a transnational perspective, where these identities become more complex as the racial, sexual, and class identities also conflate with gender antithesis, and how diaspora combines in collaboration with transnational feminist theories. Shauna Singh Baldwin upholds a prestigious position in the Punjabi diasporic community, and the theme of her novel aims at revising epistemic feminist historiography through the means of revising Indian colonial history through keeping the quote-unquote average third world woman in the center so that her contribution in the nationalist struggle could be outlined. She pays her gratitude in her text's acknowledgement to her grandmother, Raminder Sarup Singh, along with Rani Singh Sodhi, GB Singh, Manjeet Singh, who opened their hearts and memories to her, quote unquote. Baldwin also extends her gratitude towards a group of Pakistani women as, I quote, in Pakistan, my thanks to Safia Awan, Shami Manwar, filmmaker Shireen Pasha, Neelam Singh Asmin, Lahore, and many other residents of Pari Darwaza, unquote. She presents a narrative which displays the utter subjugation under which such Indian women were tormented in terms of their race through their imperialist gendered exploitation, through their own men sexually, through their fellow women such as Roop, and economically they had no standing at all as they could only access the domestic space. Baldwin represented how the partition added the element of physical violence to their already enslaved psyche. She brought together the shared experiences of these women, which perspicuously reflects the macabre aftermath that left both sides of the border with the same trauma, and how women emerged as valiant warriors even after withstanding outrageous victimization that becomes palpable after following Roop's journey. Just as a transnational feminist theorist, Baldwin also believes in the strength drawn from collaboration. And in the year 1999, an Indian organization got registered under the name Sangtin. Later in 2005, it became the Sangtin Kisan Mazdoor Sangathan, and its representatives congregated time and again to advocate for the provision of an egalitarian ground for the sustenance of women and rural poor to dissolve the privileges imparted upon the men of the society. They have published several articles in English as Sangtin Writers and in Hindi as Sangtin Samu. The writers include Reena, Richa Nagar, Richa Singh, Surbala as the key associates of the organization. At several instances, they have brought forth the iniquitous standing enforced upon women, which largely remains ubiquitous along with the perpetual anguish of the different agrarian groups, especially in the districts of Sitapur. The Sangathan writers describe the political reasons precisely responsible for adhering women to the domestic duties, thereby abating their autonomy and simultaneously sustaining the systemic oppression upon rural communities in order to manifest the hierarchical arrangement of the capitalist economic regime. They identify the necessity of developing a fraternizing relationship amid the various oppressed groups within as well as across borders to bring about essential alterations in the dominant epistemology entailing issues of women in order to thrust remodeling of the existing power relations. However, their policies only they have illustrated, the Sangathan writers have illustrated that such globalization issues driven bureaucracies have subsided by quote unquote interwoven patriarchies which function naturally within the system and reinforce a long-term incumbency. However, their policies only threaten the prospect of the liberation of hegemonized groups. Therefore, Sangathan writers assert the need, I quote, the need for dialogical practices that are committed to linking academic praxis with political praxis, unquote. In addition to the establishment of transnational connection amidst the national and expatriate groups, the Sangathan writers also foreground the socio-political challenges such as globalized capitalism, which intimidate their emancipation.
Still, I'm sorry for interrupting. Sorry for interrupting.
Yes, ma'am, I'm concluding. I'm concluding only. Their theory finds academic praxis in texts like What the Body Remembers, which would eventually thrust political praxis as outlined by Sangathan writers. The novel aligns with the notions in the sense that it consummately becomes an archetypal apotheosis in relooking at colonial history through the foregrounding of the narrative of colonized women, thereby aiming to revise the discourse of discursive sources of global knowledge production so that the condition of third world women could be propelled towards the path of autonomous individuality through the advancements of such historical fiction. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mehat Bola. Nice presentation. And it was short and sweet. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Any questions from the audience? Any questions from the audience? Prasanna ma'am, shall we move on to the next candidate then? Next presenter?
Yes, ma'am. The next presenter is Mr. Amit Kumar, PhD scholar, Hemvati Nandan, Garhwal University, Uttarakhand.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Ma'am, just give me 3 seconds to share the screen.
Yeah. And your camera should also be on.
I will try my best, ma'am.
Yeah.
If there is some technical negligence.
Mr. Amit Kumar, do you want your camera to be on too?
Is my PPT visible?
Yeah.
Am I visible at the same time?
No, sir, you aren't visible, but your PPT is visible.
Okay, let me check once again. Is it right now?
Yeah. Sir, I think you may proceed.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes.
Jai Shri Ram, Sat Sri Akal, Adab, and a very pleasant good evening to all.
Excuse me, sir, your camera. We cannot see you. Yeah,
no, we can see, ma'am. We can see him.
Okay,
but it's not in video mode.
No, ma'am. We can see him as well. We have put him in the. speaker mode, we are able to see him.
Okay.
Both the screen as well as him also we can see.
Okay, so shall we proceed then?
Yes, ma'am, we can proceed.
Okay.
May I have the permission to proceed further?
Proceed, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, myself, Amit Kumar, PhD research scholar from Department of English, Hemwati Nandan Bahuguna Garhwal University, Uttarakhand. And the topic of my presentation is From Stagnation to Liberation, an eco-feminist study on film Manikarnika with reference to 21st century Indian cinema. The abstract of my paper intends to tell the readers that my study is entirely qualitative in nature, which intends to introspect the role of woman and nature in the film Manikarnika, which is going to be analyzed through the lens of ecofeminism, particularly the concept of devaluation, which has been developed and propagated profusely by the two renowned ecofeminists, Caroline Merchant and Vandana Shiva. And it tries to seek how the affinity of woman and nature has been imposed and projected through films by the patriarchal society, through patriarchal institutions, and through constructivism. When we are talking about ecofeminism, and it would be definitely an injustice without mentioning the great ecofeminists from India, and that too from Uttarakhand, Vandana Shiva, who states ecofeminism in this manner on numerous interviews and discussions and lectures throughout the world. She says, we are either going to have a future where women lead the way to make peace with the earth, or we are not going to have a human future at all, which means she is invoking women to come forward and contribute in all the domains of life in order to replace the ecological, social, political, economical justice which has been demolished by the patriarchal constructivism. In introduction, I have tried to trace out the previous projections in Bollywood movies, how woman and nature used to be represented as static, as submissive creatures, or as a woman who is docile, kind, and always depends on her male counterpart. And this is how Kona describes in her study that the position that the woman occupies in Hindi cinema defies the pan-Indian sensibility, where free market liberalism battles reactionary ultra-nationalist forces for the bodies of women, or in effect for their labor value aestheticized through the institution of the family. It means only two ways through which women have been mostly projected, either through the institutionalization of the family or the commodification of their body. I have used few pictures that we can see easily. This is the picture of one of the famous movie Bollywood has ever made, Mother India. But here we can see the eco-feministic touch, that how India as a mass of land is being treated or referred as mother. And there is a connection between feminization of India and Indianization, or the naturalization, I can say, of the feminine. Both the things are being done in this movie. Now we can see these two beautiful actresses, Madhubala and Meena Kumari. I missed I here. Sorry for the spelling errors. But yes, these two beautiful actresses, they used to be the symbol of love and beauty, and their role in all the movies were just to have the symbolization of love and beauty, and nothing more than that. Just this much of contribution and giving the sensationalization to the theme of love. And that is what is actually carrying forward throughout our culture. And even nowadays, we can see how this culture is being reared by the society, and how brides are being decorated in the same manner. Now, these are the few famous actors like Rakhi, Nirupa Rai, Nargis Dutt, who symbolizes motherhood, but which has been imposed, or which has been constructively professed or declared by the patriarchal society. The directors have shown them always mothers who are affectionated, who are kind towards their sons, lovable towards their husband, but never ever in anger. They were very much pessimistic all the time if they have ever shown in the Bollywood. This image is very much important in order to understand the ecofeminism. Two images I have used here from the two different periods. One is from the old period, the cinema, when the cinema used to be black and white, and we can see the actress Nimi, and on the other hand Tamanna from one of the blockbuster movie that Bollywood has made, that is Bahubali. But in both the picture, there is one thing that is common, that is the equalization or affinity that director tries to show both of the woman and the nature. In the first picture, we can see how flowers are being decorated through the hair, and she's longing for her lover. And the same thing is happening in the other song, where Tamanna as an actress, she is longing for her lover, and the leaves are trying to gallop her body, and at the same time through her gown, which is going directly backwards towards the fountain, and the picture seems as if she is a part of the branch and directly ends in the fountain. So there is the description of woman and nature alike, which actually ecofeminism tries to speak. So far as Manikarnika is concerned, as a film here, I have taken an example where Captain Gordon meets Manikarnika in her palace. He represents the patriarchal society thinking and the capitalist mindset. He said in Hindi, कितनी भी भोली हो ये तो देख ही लिया होगा, हमसे डर कर पति ने खुद ही चूड़ियां पहन रखी हैं, ये चूड़ियां झांसी में रहने वाला हर कोई पहनेगा और हमारे सामने हर कोई सर झुकाएगा, कहिए इनसे सर झुकाएं. But this patriarchal attitude has always been demolished by ecofeminists, and this ecofeminist attitude gets cleared with the dialogue of Manikarnika when she says, ये सर ना डर से झुकता है ना अभिमान से उठता है, बस आंखों में आंखें डाल तो अभिमान से अड़ा रहता है. This is the picture how Chipko movement, the most famous environmentalist movement that finally gave the movement name ecofeminism, that the rustic movement, that the rural woman of Uttarakhand from Chamoli has started by hugging trees. And this is the similar way, the same ideology we can find in the film Manikarnika, when Captain Gordon or the East India Company is actually trying to demolish the kingdom of Jhansi. So she sits on the throne after the death of her husband, and she says, "Main apni Jhansi nahi dungi." And she embraced her kingdom, all the citizens, and she took this war to secure the rights of her kingdom. So far as my findings in this study is concerned, Manikarnika, as a protagonist as well as a film, has broken all the traditional notions that focused always on the glorification of heroism of male actor as protagonist. And Kangana Ranaut as an actress appears magnificent as well as inspiring in performing the role of Rani Lakshmi Bai, full of heroism similar to her male counterparts roles like Ranveer Singh as Baji Rao, Hrithik Roshan as Akbar, or Ajay Devgan as Tanaji. Conclusion. At the conclusion, I would like to say, because my title says that from stagnation to liberation, I have shown you the stagnation, how women used to be constructed, or how women as a character used to be bounded within the limitations. But this movie comes as a movie which has broken all the traditional beliefs, and we have never ever seen a woman playing a character showing bravery, showing valor, showing strength, love for the motherland, love for the dignity of herself and for entire humanity. And that is what ecofeminism tries to seek, to have justice, equality, irrespective of caste, color, creed. And that is all about my presentation, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Very interesting paper indeed. Very interesting that you have applied critical theory, literary theory to cinema. If any questions? Other presenters?
Yeah, ma'am, I think that is a good presentation. We'll move on to the next one. Shall we move on to the next presenter?
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah. So the next presenter, yeah.
Next presenter is Mrs. Kunguma Ishwari, Assistant Professor of Vinayaga Missions College of Nursing, Puducherry.
Mrs. Kunguma Ishwari, are you there? Ma'am, are you there? Mrs. Kunguma Ishwari?
She's there, ma'am.
Yes.
Sure.
Presenters, kindly turn on your camera. While you come for presentation, please turn on your camera.
I tried unmuting her mic, but there's no response from her side. Should we wait or we'll move on to the next presenter?
Yeah, we'll better move on to the next presenter. We'll move on to the next presenter later. Let's see. Let's see later. All right. So, is Ms. Kanika Priya there? Ms. Kanika Priya, Assistant Professor, Sarada Gangadharan College, Pondicherry.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am, kindly present now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Please switch on your camera.
I'm going to present my screen, ma'am.
Yeah, but still, I think you can switch on your camera. You can switch on your camera and you can present it too.
Some error is showing. I could not present my, I could not show my video. I'll start up with the PPT, and my presentation topic is role on communication. Role on communication in education. Can you see my PPT? Okay.
Yes.
So the first thing in this topic is discussed over the introduction given to the communication process, which is verbal, non-verbal, and certain components which is designed to meditate students and teacher behavior. The impact of partners is also important, and the thought of working style, how the teacher is being with the students and how he or she communicates with students is also important. And on the other aspect, the development of communication skills in relation with the teaching process is teaching process in education. We must identify the future needs, how the needs is for future. According
Excuse
to that,
me,
the communication should be there. Yeah, ma'am.
Sorry for interrupting. You're supposed to switch on your camera, it seems, right? You're asked to switch on your camera.
Yeah, ma'am, but in my laptop some problem, I suppose, like it's not getting into it. Okay. So that's why my paper is entitled with the importance of the process, and is also the which are implications of that. Okay. And the quality of language is most important initially to note how the communication is with the use of proper language. Without any proper language, we could not communicate as well as we could not do anything relevant to the communicating process in the classroom. And we have to use the appropriate level of language in communication with the correct grammar, usage, and which is most prominent in the classroom. The comprehensible, like we should be precise in our communication process. And when we see to the question paper, what are the most important things that we should note here is the balanced syllabus and the conformity of the modelness, and how the answer sheet should be like within the time limit the people should answer. According to that, the communication should be there in the question paper. Simultaneously, the length and the answer are also important while communicating the question paper. And when we go towards the process, the purpose of examination, what should be the purpose is whether the students is pass or fail. It is not a matter. The knowledge should be tested, and for that purpose only, the examination is aimed, or the goal of examination is that. And you can see with the process of examination, what is the main thing should be noted is how a student is being learned, how he or she is equipped, how the knowledge is being gathered. These are the things that can be noted from the point of aim of examination. And with the speech and wisdom, what we can know is how one speak, to who one speak, how or when or where one speak is all matters in the speech and wisdom. And when we consider to the communication process, there are civility and culture. With the culture, the communication comes out. Even you can see where the leadership is, how the a good leaders is where a good communication is. And when you go towards the effectiveness of speech, what are the most important things are, you should pause some time, you should raise your voice, you should there should be like intonation aspect is there in the effective speech, like pronunciation, volume of your speech, space and pitch, everything counterpoints in the effective speech. And for the communication process towards the students, first level is considered with the English, second level is with the comprehensible words, third is with the sentence structure. And what is more important in teaching profession is how you make the students read the newspapers, journals, cultivate the writing skills, how to make students to listen, everything comes together with the barriers in communication. Everything should be tackled while you communicate. And in the interpersonal relationship, what you should think prominent is that there should be some clarity in that through vocabulary and some sort of things. And even in the interview, for when you go for interview for jobs and all, what is most tested is like with your communication only, your jobs is being prominent. And hearing and listening is also a very important part while you communicate. What you say should be heard to someone, and someone should listen to what you say. These are the things that has been discussed. And in the thought of communication process, thoughts are given much importance, what you think and how you express it. Here the second the second point I have given one sentence like diarrhea of thoughts. Your thoughts should be compared of diarrhea, and your words should be a constipation, which is immediate process to create a faulty communication. And the regional influence, if you ask the question like what is your good name, as though there are good name and bad name, there is some sort of regional influence in your communication process. And next I'll skip to communication and written process. When a teacher is teaching about H2O, like a solution or an equation for water, when a person starts writing like HIJK, it is a wrong process. So written communication is also important. And the correct usage of language through grammar, syntax, brevity, precision, these are the things that has been given prominent through in the process of correct language. And next I'll skip to communication by teachers, how the teacher should communicate through critical thinking, analysis, application, like trigger of thoughts. You should trigger the students with the thoughts that you have. And next, the phonic communication, like verb, tone and style are more important. And next, humility and fear, where this communication is created is through the boss and the subordinate, like the superior people and the inferior people, teacher and student. Here the humility and fear is created in communication. And non-verbal communication, you all will know the body, without any verbal thing, the body language will be speaking, that is non-verbal. And your moods also communicate, like anger, happiness, prejudice, affection. These are the things that also included in communication process. Next, the messages, how the messages conveyed is through encouraging, ensuring, compassionate, affectionate. So these are the process which make your communication a message process. And you can see the childhood affection on communication, how a child is being affectionate within the 3 months or 6 months. The child is used to the message process and all. It has been affectionate towards the communication process. And the professional influence in each profession, you can see the communication process: lawyers, teachers, and medicinal representatives, salesperson, maestries, all sort of people have this sort of communication. Even animal communication, you can see through howling, barking, some sort of things like dogs, birds, elephants, each and every animals have their own communication process. And listening and communication skills, through listening and communication, what all the things that you should know is like pronunciation, body language, the grammar part and vocabulary, speech attentiveness, and the consistency in style and practice. So the factors are also discussed in this paper, and the purposes of communication is also discussed with the modern society, how the modern society, according to that, how the communication is being dealt, and the evolution of communication from the prehistory point, the things are being dealt. With that, I'll conclude my point. Like for education, what is more important is communication. With that, only the effectiveness of a person will be expressed. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for the wonderful opportunity.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was a nice presentation, well explained. All right. And the audience, do you have any questions? The presentation was simple and very clear, very clearly explained. All right. Shall we move to the next candidate?
Yes, ma'am. If Mrs. Kunguma Ishwari is available, she can.
Ma'am, then we may carry on.
Kunguma Ishwari, can you hear us, madam? Ma'am, otherwise, shall we move on to the final participant?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And then again, I will come back to Kunguma Ishwari, ma'am.
Right. PhD scholar, Madurai Kamaraj University, to present her paper.
Yes, ma'am. Respected dignitaries, teachers, and fellow friends, good evening, everyone. I'm going to present a paper entitled From Damsel to Warrior, Metamorphosis of Bella Swan in Stephanie Meyer's The Twilight Saga. Ma'am, I'm sharing my screen.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. My topic, From Damsel to Warrior, Metamorphosis of Bella Swan in Stephanie Meyer's The Twilight Saga. In the tradition of the genre of vampire fiction, vampires have been described variously as bestial creatures, satanic byronic lords, femme fatales, or unseen psychic forces. When Bram Stoker's Dracula was published in 1897, a new type of literary fantastic genre was born. Vampires and their myths found their life in the minds of readers and in the words of writers. With each new author, vampires take on a different life force and mythology. In 2005, the vampire world was restructured when the novel Twilight, written by Stephanie Meyer, was released. The novel became an instant bestseller. Meyer expanded the story into a series with 3 more novels: New Moon, Eclipse, and Breaking Dawn. All the 4 novels were adapted into motion pictures following the success of the novels. To make this presentation lively, I use images from the novel, from the movie itself. The Twilight Saga tells the story of Bella Swan, a teenager who moves in with her father in an unfamiliar town. This move highlights the self-sacrificial behavior that plagues Bella throughout the series, as she does so to make her mother's life easier, even though she does not want to live in Forks, Washington. In her school, she starts a romantic relationship with Edward Cullen, a vampire in Forks, Washington. Her relationship with Edward leads to run-ins with several groups of dangerous vampires, putting her life in his hands multiple times over the course of the series. In all the 4 novels, Bella is repeatedly endangered by her proximity to these vampires and werewolves. Bella reluctantly agrees to marry Edward and becomes life-threateningly pregnant with his half-vampire baby. At the end of the series, Bella Swan has become Bella Cullen, a vampire who is no longer in danger from either her relationship with Edward Cullen or the variety of other vampires who had wanted her dead. No characters or relationships are more complicated than the main female protagonist, the 17-year-old Bella, and her love affair with Edward, a vampire 92 years her senior. The saga presents the heroine Bella's development from adolescence to maturity, from damsel to warrior. This research paper tries to illustrate that though Bella was weak as a human, she does succeed as a feminist when she becomes a vampire, which allows her to become an empowered feminist hero. In the first 3.5 books, Edward exerts all agency and control, whereas Bella is weak, vulnerable, and in constant danger. Bella becomes so engrossed in her relationship with the vampire that she begins to show all of her interest over to him. She remains in a relationship that could end her life due. Furthermore, readers do not recognize the relationship as addictive. They see the relationship as ideal and Edward as perfect. Throughout the course of the novel, she describes herself as clumsy, uninteresting, and unattractive. Because of her many faults, Bella can relate with many types of readers. Though there are many forms of feminism, this research article applies Gothic feminism to analyze the laws of autonomy and empowerment in the progression of Bella Swan's character. Rita Antoni offers a definition of Gothic feminism. In an article, she writes, "There is no other theme than Gothic which can express gender anxiety and subversion more suitably than the terrain of vampirism, all due to its overt sexual symbolism. In Mayer's novels, gender anxiety is expressed when Bella tries to gain autonomy. In Breaking Dawn, the fourth and final novel of the series, Bella is given the opportunity to become a strong and autonomous female after she is transformed into a vampire. In this novel, Edward and Bella are finally married and they conceive a child. Because Bella refuses to terminate the pregnancy and Edward refuses to make Bella an indestructible vampire, Bella is nearly killed by her daughter in the pregnancy and delivery process. As always, Edward saves Bella and she is transformed into a fearsome vampire. Bella relishes her strength and discovers that she has the supernatural ability to shield those she loves from harm. From the first moment she awakes from the transformation process, Bella is physically stunning and acutely aware of her surroundings. Bella realizes that she is stronger than Edward. In a race with Edward, Bella realizes how powerful she is as a vampire. She is so strong that she says, "I could hear Edward racing to find me. My jump had been twice as long as his. When he reaches my tree, his eyes were wide." Because of her incredible and impressive strength and willpower, Bella is able to be around humans the same day she wakes up from her transformation. Whereas Jasper, who had been a vampire for decades, was unable to be as comfortable as Bella. Bella's determination is an asset to the Cullen family and herself as they learn that powerful Valkyrie vampires are coming to destroy the Cullen clan. In the preparation for the battle with the Valkyrie, Bella learns to fight and use her power. Bella relies on raw emotion to utilize her power. Here I quote, "Abruptly, I was furious, beyond furious. I was murderously enraged." Close the quotation. Bella's anger proves to be the most valuable advantage as she is able to protect almost 20 other vampires from danger. "My shield exploded a good 50 yards out from me effortlessly, taking only a fraction of my concentration. I could feel it flex just like another muscle, obedient to my will." In this particular context, Bella becomes a Gothic feminist. She is able to protect her family and their very existence depends on her abilities. As a vampire, Bella is fierce and a free agent with lives dependent on her. She learns how to be an autonomous and independent and gains power that challenge the oldest and strongest vampires. Bella's metamorphosis proves that she has become an autonomous agent when she eventually changes from human to vampire. At the beginning of the saga, she was highly dependent upon Edward to protect her. But towards the end of the series, she becomes a protector of her family, including Edward. Herewith, I conclude my presentation. Thank you, ma'am.
Very eye-catchy presentation, Kavita.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Taking us back to our college days, right? When we were just fascinated by the writer, right? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. So I think we'll have to move on to the last participant, Mrs. Kunkuma Ishwari. Is she there? Is she there? Mrs. Kunkuma Ishwari?
She's here all the time, ma'am, but she can't hear us, I think.
So what shall we do, Anita ma'am? Anita ma'am, what shall we do? Shall we wind up or should we wait for her?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. I think she might have some signal issues. Maybe we can add her for tomorrow's presentation.
Okay, so shall we wind up? Shall we wind up the session there?
Yes.
Okay.
Ma'am,
comments.
Yes. On the session.
Yeah. So from today's presentation, it was just evident that almost all the presenters, they have just poured the midnight oil, right? They have taken a lot of effort, right? We should just acknowledge that, right? So we are highly appreciated that we should really appreciate your effort, your honesty in preparing what commendable papers, right? And no paper was just inferior to the other. Right, no paper was inferior to the other, and each paper was really unique, right? Something like a jewel in their own area, right? And I just want to tell you one suggestion, right? So when the organizers give you some rules and regulations to be followed, just keep on adhering to this, right? Not just for this conference. Whenever you go for any conference, online or offline, whatever it is, right? Please adhere to that. Adhere to the rules and regulations given by the organizers for the conference, right? Especially coming to the time, adhere to the time, and also the requirements of what each conference. The requirements of each conference may differ, but please adhere to it. All right. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Okay, ma'am. Miss
Kunkumari, she's back.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah. Shall I continue, ma'am?
Yes, you can present, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, I need some seconds for my preparation. Visible, ma'am?
Yes, I mean.
Okay, thank you.
You aren't visible. You're not visible, ma'am.
Oh, please wait. Hello. Hello. Hello, ma'am. Hello. Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, we can hear you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
Shall I continue? Hello. Shall I continue, sir?
I think so, because we are able to, I think the organizers, they are not able to hear. I think I'm able to hear. I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. You can please continue. Ma'am is here.
Yeah. I'm Kunkumari, ma'am. If you're unable to, get connected, I think you can do it tomorrow. Is it okay, ma'am? So I think we'll wind up. Prasanna, ma'am, shall we wind up the session today?
Right, Mama. Again, a signal is not working. Maybe.
Okay, so better we'll wind up the session. We'll ask Prasanna, ma'am, to for her comments, and then we'll wind up the session. And I think Kukuma ma'am can do it tomorrow, I believe. Shall we do it?
Sure.
Yes. So Prasanna ma'am, do you have something a comment to make? Do you have any comments?
I'm really very sorry that Ishwari ma'am can't be able to present. Okay. All the participants did their job very well. All very interesting and contemporary topics. And thank you so much, participants, and thank you so much, organizers, for having given the opportunity. Thank you so much.
I would like to especially thank a few people, right? Mr. Sahil Bhagat, Mrs. Samina Khan, Ms. Mrutu Sharma, Wahar Yunus Bhatt, Mr. Wahar Yunus Bhatt, right? All these people did extremely well, all right? And you have a long way to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Prasanna.
Thank you so much for the opportunity given to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. CHRISSIE, ma'am, for conducting this session wonderfully. You were very gentle. You were making ourselves comfortable in spite of being this watch that you part of. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Prasanna, ma'am. Thank you. Glad that you can be part of. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Yes. Dear participants, the feedback link is posted in the chat box. Kindly fill it up. Time or is the session kindly log in 10 minutes before. Thank you.